actually coming so that way it's like.
All right, we are live. We are live.
Oh, you're supposed to be looking to look ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call to order and welcome you to the Hamden-Wilbraham Regional School District School Committee meeting. It is 6:31 p.m. I see that David Sanders from Wilbraham Public Access Channel is recording. Is there anyone else here recording this meeting?
Sarah Heenan and reminder.
Thank you. We will do roll call in alphabetical order. Cheryl Caruana. Here. Tim Collins. Present. Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Lisa Murray. Here. Rich Redeker.
Here.
Mike Terabasi.
Yeah.
And Michelle Bujo are here. If you would please stand, Mike will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We are going to begin with our student representatives. We have Elena Bergeron. She's not here this evening. And then we have Cadence Ellard. So thank you for being here.
Lately, through our student activities, we've had many different events going on, one of them being our Santa event in December before the holidays. It was a major success with our student council opening it up to all staff of HWRSD. We usually only have it open to Minnetonka Regional High School staff families. Through it, we had a lot more kids than usual. We usually only have a few. This year we had in double digits, which is not normal. We had our winter concert on December 11th here at Minnetonka. Last month we had Dress for a Cause for Lorraine's Kitchen, where we raised money on a Friday morning. We have Dress for a Cause next Friday to Rick's Place. Our ATI members went and served ice cream at the Holyoke Soldiers Home. Tomorrow night we are going to Bocce with our LPVEC program, along with some of our student council members who are going to the Special Olympic Bocce tournament to either be fans in the stands or work alongside our LPVEC students. And upcoming, we've been working on getting ready to go to MASC. We have 20 delegates going to the state conference in Hyannis from March 5th to the 7th to learn about a lot of different leadership skills. Lately, we've been working on having candlelit concerts here in the IRC. It is an international type of concert where kids come together to discuss the music being played. Each time one of these is held, they set up candles in the IRC and play a different type of music. This past one, we had classical music being played by 3 of our students.
Very nice, thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
That was excellent. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We will continue with new business. We will begin with the YRBS data presentation from Bree Bernash. Thank you for being here. Okay, thank you. Everyone can hear me? Hi, everyone. My name is Bree Bernash. I'm the director of the Hamden-Wilbraham Partners for Youth Coalition. Not with me, but working closely with me is my colleague Jackie Hafner. She's actually working with some of our students right now at the basketball game, so that's why she's not with me today. So, here, you want to go to the next slide. So tonight I just want to present to you some data from our Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which was from last year, so our 2024 data. So this data really just kind of helps us direct our efforts as a coalition as to what we should focus on, just kind of as a pulse point for what's really going on with the students in terms of our data. And as I go through this data, there will be a lot of numbers, so please feel free to interrupt me and ask questions at any time. Next slide. So here's just a little background of the YRBS in the history of the district. It's been going on for quite some time, and like I mentioned, just gives us some information about where our students are at. So just to note, as I review this data going forward, whenever I mention past year data, I'll be referring to April 2023 through April 2024. And any data referring to past month will be March of 2024. We're currently gearing up for our 2025 surveys. All 9th through 12th graders are surveyed who are enrolled in spring PE classes, and then all 7th and 8th graders are surveyed. So in this survey, we have 414 responses from high schoolers and 382 responses from the middle school. Okay, so starting off with some mental health related data for the high school. Next slide. So rates of depression and self-harm have decreased since their peak during the pandemic. This is some really great numbers to see. You can see from like 2021, 2022, at its highest now back down to 28%. So we're just about back at where we were pre-COVID numbers, which is really great to see. So still room for improvement, but on the right track. While our suicide attempts and plans are low, still this number shows over a quarter of our students report experiencing depressive symptoms over the past year. So although it is a decline from previous years, 25% or more of our students is still a lot of students experiencing depressive symptoms. However, most students who need to access mental health services know how to do so. So of students who reported that they did need counseling in the past year, so that was 138 students, 73% of those students reported that they were able to access the help they needed. And all of the students who were surveyed, so the 414 students, 70% of them reported that they know how to connect to help if they need it. So our goal really is to get that 70% number as close to 100% as possible. And that's part of what we do as the coalition, is trying to make resources readily available and accessible for students and their families. So here are some examples of positive coping skills that students reported have helped them feel better when they're having a difficult day. The most common ones up top you can see are listening to music, spending time with friends. Some other options that came up, lower percentages, were things like drawing, painting, art activities, after-school activities, yoga, journaling, etc. So now just a little bit about driver safety data. So we have very low numbers of students reporting driving under the influence of alcohol or other drugs, and this is referring to the past 30 days. Just for a note, this is just about 59% of students who were surveyed. The other 41% of students who report that they do not drive were excluded from this data. So this is just surveying students who drive. Also, last year on the survey, we added a new note for the students, letting them know that they would not be incriminating themselves if they answered yes to this question, to hopefully encourage them to answer honestly if that were to be the case. But low numbers altogether. So now going into a little bit of the substance use data. Vaping and cigarette use did increase slightly in 2024, but surprisingly vaping is much lower now than it was at its peak around 2019. With survey data, it may not be exactly accurate in the numbers of people who are reporting their use, but generally it should reflect trends over time, and we still are seeing decreases over time. So overall, a good trend to be seen.
Can I ask you a question about this?
Yeah.
When did the Massachusetts ban the selling of vaping and stuff like that had flavors in it? Do you remember what year that was? Is that correlated to
I
this?
don't remember off the top of my head, but that was, I want to say, at least like 3-4 years ago, maybe more. I would have to double check. I could get back to you on that.
Yeah, I thought it looks like if it happened around 19 or 20, you could see how it decreased their comments. Maybe that's also part of it.
Possibly, but I will say I'm a facilitator of our I-Decide program, which is a course that students take if they are caught using substances on school grounds, and every single one of those kids uses a flavored vape, so they are still getting them somehow, somewhere. Yeah. And actually they say that they wouldn't use the vape if they weren't flavored, so something to know. The kids tell you lots of stuff. So although the vaping did increase slightly, drinking and cannabis use did increase in 2024. So you can see the 12% increase from the 9%, and then the cannabis use around the same. Another thing to note about the alcohol and cannabis use is that these are two substances that are more widely and socially acceptable in the community, and so that may also be reflective of these numbers. Very small number of students reported having used substances on school property in the last 30 days, so March of 2024. So of all the students surveyed, it was 1% said they were caught using alcohol, 2% were caught using cannabis, and 3% caught using a vaping device. But 9% of the students did say that they were offered, sold, or given illegal drugs on school property. With our I Decide program that I just mentioned, we typically get around 2 to 6 students per month for the course, so we would have to run some numbers to see if those numbers are the same as what we're seeing reported on this survey. So this chart here is reflective of students who have ever vaped in their lifetime, so ever tried it at any point in time, which was 74 students who completed the survey. And these were just some of the top reasons they reported trying it, or where they got it from. Most report that they just got it from a friend, from another person. Some get it from vape shops. The ISEC students also told me some vape shops that will sell to them, but they wouldn't tell me the specific ones. So just some examples of how they are getting them. Students also most often reported curiosity and self-medication as reasons to try vapes, wanting to know how it would feel, helping with anxiety. And again, this is the same percentage of students who have ever tried vaping in their lifetime. And so part of the I Decide course that we do is to really get students to focus on those positive coping skills so that they don't turn to substances and vaping as a way of coping.
Can I ask you, just, sorry, another quick one. Is that okay that I'm asking?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Have you ever heard of these things called Zims? They're like little packets.
The Zims, yes.
Yeah, Zims.
They're little nicotine packets.
Right.
Yes.
Are we tracking that now? That seems to be the new replacement for.
Yeah, so it's, I think it's probably used maybe same amount as vapes are, but it's much harder to see because it's just like in their mouth rather than maybe smoke coming out. But I have heard that some students are using those, and Zins also just came out with a Zin toothpick. So they could be chewing what looks like a toothpick, but it's nicotine. So there's lots of things on the market that are changing all the time. It's very hard to keep up with the new, very hidden strategies that these companies.
It's like they're doing it on purpose, you know?
They definitely do it on purpose.
Not the students.
No, the companies, yeah, they target the younger students for sure. So here's just some data about students' attitudes regarding substances. So in general, students tend to think that their parents would disapprove of substance use more than their friends would. So really our goal is to try to get this gap. So you can see parents is in blue and friends, peers are in the orange. So we really want to get these numbers as close together as possible, and we want students to think that their friends also disapprove of them using substances. And you can see as you get lower towards cannabis and alcohol use that they think their friends would disapprove less and less for those types of substances. And students' perceptions of their friends' disapproval has actually increased over time, which is a really great trend to see, that peers are not approving of substance use. So we're really moving in a positive direction with this data. And also because we know, especially during the high school time, that friends are extremely influential. So if you can be around friends who don't approve of substance use, then that would greatly impact your use as well. And most students do believe that there are risks with using substances. However, you can see that they believe there's much less risk with cannabis and alcohol than there are with tobacco or other prescription drugs. So again, with the more widely socially acceptable substances, we tend to see lower perceived risks with those. And students believe that more of their peers are using substances than is actually being reported. So this is really where social norms campaigns can be used to dispel misconceptions about peer substance use. The hard part with social norms campaigns is getting that student buy-in and getting them to believe that this is really what's happening among their peers. We do have a new student ambassador program, as I mentioned earlier, so we're really hopeful that this program will kind of help kickstart that and get students to believe that not all students are using substances.
Question, excuse me, right here.
Yes, sir.
On that chart, how do you know the opposite isn't true? That if I'm a student, I know my friends are using it, but I'm not going to be honest about if I'm using it. How do you know that the case is not the exact opposite?
We don't. Yeah, that's also a possibility.
And so these are all anonymous,
Yes.
and you got about response to about half the kids in the high school?
Yep, anyone enrolled in PE in the spring.
There's about half the kids.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So most students who have reported talking to their parents in the last year about substance use. So this slide is really emphasizing that communication with family is a large protective factor. A study found that regular family meals with during adolescence is associated with lower odds of substance use. So this is a very impactful prevention strategy, and it's free. So. And here are some reasons why students reported that they don't use, with the number one reasons being that it's unhealthy and that they don't want to get addicted. Some other things listed there as well. At 27%, not listed on the screen, is someone in my family has a history of substance abuse. So just some various reasons why students choose not to use substances. Okay, so switching gears a little bit to middle school students. So this is 382 students, 7th and 8th grade students. So unfortunately, many middle school students are struggling with mental health. 53% of them reported that sometime during the past year, nothing was fun for them, nothing was interesting for them, and 31% reported that they felt so sad, hopeless almost every day, which is a diagnostic criteria for depression. So this 31% number is compared to the high school number at 28%, so it is a bit higher for the middle school students. So here's a chart reflecting that 31% that I just mentioned of the depressive symptoms. It has lowered since the last year, but obviously still a number that we want to decrease and get these students access to the mental health resources that they need. And then here are some positive coping skills that the students reported. The top 4 choices are all the same as the high school students, so many common themes among the students here. Okay, so now some substance use data for the middle school. Great news that vaping has declined sharply among the middle school students. This past year it was barely 1% reported they used any vaping devices in the last 30 days. And only 1 student reported having vaped on school property in the last 30 days, so very low reporting rates here. Also good news, drinking and cannabis use has also declined sharply. So these are great numbers to see. We love these trends going down to the 1% range. And now some attitudes about substance use. So this graph is what we want to see for the high school. This is great. You can see it's much closer numbers for the peers and for the parents' perceptions of disapproval. So we really want to keep this up and carry that through high school as much as possible. And same as the high school students, for middle school, most students believe that it is risky to use substances, but again, we see that lower percentage, with substances like alcohol that they perceive to be, more readily available and accessible. And here, both the perceived and actual use are very low. So middle school students are not really using substances, and they also don't really think their peers are using them either. So this is great data to see for them. And about half of middle school students reported that they've talked with their parents about vaping in the last year. Other substances, not as much, but it's very important to have these conversations early and often to really embed those prevention strategies at an early age, and this will help set them up to have great prevention strategies as they get into high school. And lastly, here are some reasons that the middle schoolers chose not to use substances. Some similar responses as the high schoolers: unhealthy, they don't want to get addicted, they don't want to face consequences. So their responses were a little bit more focused on consequences versus the high schoolers. And a little bit higher percentage than the high school students was someone in their family had a history of substance abuse, so 38% responded with that. Okay, so that's all of my data to present to you. I know it's a lot of numbers, so I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Just a little bit of information about how we get this data and what's funding this. So in addition to our Drug-Free Communities Coalition grant, we have 2 other grants that support this effort. Is our Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, which is our staff underage drinking grant, and then our Mental Health Awareness Training grant. So both of these come together to help us with collecting this data, providing resources to students, doing family engagement events, all different types of things. Our Drug-Free Coalition grant is ending on July 31st, so we still will use these 2 other grants to supplement these efforts, and are also in the process of applying for another grant to supplement the coalition efforts as well. So here, this is just a little bit of information. This is a free community resource that's paid for by our grants. It's youth mental health first aid. Many of our high school, middle school, and district staff are trained in this already, which is great. So this is, again, free. I'm one of the instructors, along with a few other folks in the district. And this is a really great way to kind of bring that intersection of becoming aware of maybe your students' mental health needs or substance use risks, whatever it might be. So it's a really great informative class. So if anyone's ever interested in learning more about it, please feel free to contact me. And then lastly, we're also working on implementing the teen mental health first aid program. So this is a program for high school students to be able to be like peer mentors. It does differentiate, the fact that they're not there to be, counselors for their peers, but rather how to feel confident in helping their peer get to a trusted adult. And just to kind of make them more aware of, different mental health resources and the access to that. So I would love to share more with you about what all the different things our coalition is currently doing, all of our different initiatives and our programs and different outreach that we're doing, but I know today I'm just focused on data, so if you ever want me to come back and give you more information on the different programs we're doing, I would be happy to, but thank you very much, and if anyone has any questions,
Yeah, thank you for this, and we definitely love you to, some of us I'm sure would love you to come back. And I just want to say out loud, so if you need some more information on this, go to hwp4y.org, which is Hamden and Wilbraham Partners for Youth.org. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will continue with the Wilbraham Hampton Academic Trust update. We do have our representatives. We have the WUT President, Ms. Judd, and the WUT Vice President and Committee Chair, Ms. Ryan. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you to the school committee for having us. My name is Chris Judd, and I appreciate it. I'm the president. And then we have...
Hi, I'm Alexandra Ryan. I'm also a parent in the district.
Oh, me too. Me too. Yes. So first of all, I just want to say that thank you for allowing us to speak. I have just been involved with WUT for the last 2 years, and I'm very proud of what the parents have done. So we are a nonprofit. And it is the Wilbraham Hampden Academic Trust. It started in 2003, and since then it was, we've given away over $200,000, and with that being $85,000 was given away in the last 2 years. So it is a nonprofit, and so we're giving away grants. So our whole point is that we're partnering with our schools, all the schools in Hampden and Wilbraham, educators and community. And our mission is pretty clear. We're not here to offset budget items, right? But we want to act as a tool for educators, empowering them to dream bigger, think creatively, and also make better learning experiences for our pre-K through 12. Now, together we can build a culture of innovation, and we have strict criteria when we give away our money. So one is that it really has to give to the masses. So if someone's coming for a grant for 12 students, we will not give it. But if you're coming for a grant that will go 100+ students over time, then that is a good investment to give a grant to. But we can't do it without you. And so we have, if you know any of the people here, this is our awesome dedicated board of directors. We have a brand new group of people. Many of you might have known the previous administration, which is Mark Atkins, Mike Stackowitz, etc. But this group right here, in my opinion, is pretty darn good. So we have a lot of energy. I hope that all of you came to our Fall Fest, and in the fall, we'll have that again. But our biggest breadwinner is really where Alex is going to come in, because she is dynamic with all of the fundraising stuff.
Sure, I'll take it. So in order for the collaboration with our schools to really thrive, and for us to be able to award the grants to the schools, and there are dozens of applications each year in the tens of thousands of dollars, and we can't fund them all without, the community engaging with the mission. And so it's crucial that, including the school committee, that we work hand in hand. Your support means everything, so attending events like the Fall Fest was beneficial to kind of expose our mission to the community in an impactful way where parents and children could engage with what we are aiming to achieve. But our annual gala is a more formal event, and we raise money through sponsorships, live auction, silent auction, raffle prizes, and ticket attendees. So we hope that you'll also join us at the gala. There's some information on the screen now about the gala, and if you guys would like to take phones out, if that's allowed, snap the QR code for ticket purchases and pass it along to anyone you can think of. So this is going to be a formal event, not black tie, but not cocktail attire. We're going to have a live comedian, there'll be live music, acoustic, DJ, dancing, silent and live auction, and a plated dinner up at Great Horse, which is obviously the best place in town. That will be the most impactful fundraising event of our year, of our fiscal year, and hopefully this will be the biggest one yet. Last year's gala raised $55,000, which we were able to grant, I think, 8 or 9. We were able to approve 8 or 9 grants this year, one of them being the overhaul of the Mile Tree Library, another the overhaul of the remodeling, I think mostly, and entirely new equipment purchases at Stony Hill Elementary's cafeteria, which was proudly Monique Danglis's legacy as she departs. We've also made significant contributions to the robotics program at the middle school, to PE equipment at all 5 schools under Minichog. But we can't contribute in the ways that we want to without community engagement and with teachers and administrators and the school committee really promoting our efforts. So I hope that you'll also consider joining us for the check distribution days, where Mr. Provost has also been gracious enough to allow us to force him to hold a giant check and take photos. But things like that, and using our social media and marketing power to help share our message is really impactful as well. So if you ever see something come through from the district about what, I hope you'll share it with your students, share it with your class, and share it with your families. So thanks for having us today, and I do hope you'll join us at the gala.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for our representatives?
I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for the great work you're doing in our district on behalf of our kids. Some of the projects you've done over the past 2 years have really been great and impactful. I'm particularly proud of the library project at Sewell. I think that sort of transformed that whole space. And I will say, other than handing out diplomas, holding giant checks is probably my favorite official duty.
We appreciate that. Thank you so much.
I guess the last thing I would say is that if there's anything that we can do to help in other ways that we're not doing right now, just let us know.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and inviting us to meetings like this so that it can be shared throughout the community is super impactful. So if the invitation is open, we'd love to attend a few more times. Share the results.
That'd be amazing, yeah. And get updates on, when you're giving out stuff, to have that be part of the meetings would be wonderful.
Absolutely, yeah. We can definitely have our marketing director communicate with the board on what check presentations and grants have been funded in previous months before the next meeting.
Excellent.
And with that said, I've been working in nonprofit for a very long time, and you know, a lot of people will say, well, I can't monetarily give, but what can I do? You have a whole Rolodex, probably of 200 people in your phone. If you could just take that QR code and it'll send you right to the Eventbrite piece and send it out and say, great cause, would love to have you. I went to my hairdresser this morning and I said, hey, want to go? She goes, you know, that would be great. I would love to. It's right after Valentine's, and I'll send it out to my friend group. She has no tie to Wilbraham, but what's really cool is that if that's what you can do, is get that out for us, that would be wonderful.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We will continue with the superintendent's update.
Thank you. And I will be yielding the microphone for most of my presentation. I just wanted to point out that enhancing the staff induction and mentoring program was a strategic plan objective, 5B specifically. And it's a very important one because we know that whether you're entering the profession as a new teacher or whether you're just new to our district or new to a building within the district, it is a very difficult transition. We know that for a long time, evidence around the attrition rate of new teachers is incredibly high. I haven't checked into it since COVID, but I know for a number of years it was something like nearly half of teachers left the profession in the first 5 years. And so it's very important that we cherish and honor and hold new teachers in a special way to welcome them if they're new to our schools or new to our district or new to teaching altogether. And so it's my delight to turn over some of the people, or turn my presentation over to some of the people who've been doing that work over the past several years.
We have some special guests that are going to help share the information. Hello, everybody. I'm really excited to share some information about how we have worked toward meeting this strategic plan initiative. We have Jill Penichini, Terry Henrich, Kristen Miracle, Frankie Bufumi, and Nicole Disa here. And so I have lots to share. We have a great slide presentation, and they're going to be jumping in and at the end sharing some of their thoughts that if we haven't already shared them. So thank you all for being here. Go ahead, Erin. So as Dr. Provost said, the Strategic Plan Initiative, Objective 5B, asked us to think about how we were supporting new teachers through the mentor and induction program. A formal teacher induction and mentoring program is critical for supporting and developing novice teachers as they enter K-12 classrooms. A strong induction and mentoring program has been found to improve teacher retention rates, teaching practice, and most importantly, student outcomes. The strategic plan Objective 5B identified induction and mentoring as a priority, asking us to provide more effective support in the first year and develop a multi-year mentor program so that to further support new teachers as they continue developing in their roles. So new teachers who have an initial or provisional license are required to participate in a one-year induction and mentoring program. These mentoring experiences must be documented so they can apply for their professional license. So the requirement is the one-year induction program and then 50+ hours after that first year of additional mentoring. What we have done as part of our trying to meet the strategic plan is to develop a mentor focus group for teachers needing to complete these hours. So 25 hours for year 2 and 25 hours for year 3, and we'll speak more about that in a bit. DESE gives guidance, district's guidance about what an effective induction and mentoring program could include, and then they ask districts to create a program that will best meet the needs of their district. The team really wanted to share the mission statement because this is found in our induction mentoring handbook, but it really speaks to what we are trying to do for our programming. The mission of HWRSD induction and mentoring program is ultimately to support children's social, emotional, and academic learning. We aim to do this by providing support, encouragement, and guidance to their teachers, namely beginning teachers and incoming teachers who are new to our district. The program mirrors our district's vision statement. It promotes a safe and healthy environment for all participants to engage in interactive communities of creative, passionate thinkers. It is purposely collegial and non-judgmental, thereby supporting the professional growth for all. So the most important thing to this group is supporting new teachers so we can support students. Students are our focus. They're at the center of this. The goals of our induction mentoring program are to introduce new teachers to our values. Yep, there we go. Animation. To introduce new teachers to our values and induct them into a culture that supports diversity and equity for all. Next. To welcome them into our community and provide a sense of immediate belonging. To familiarize them with our resources, including social, emotional, and academic curriculum and systems. To enhance their skills through professional development opportunities, coaching, peer observations, and reflections. Provide them with a mentor and support team to seek out confidential support, and to retain passionate, committed educators who value ongoing learning. Our induction and mentoring program is more than just a general orientation to the district. The mentor program provides a variety of supports for teachers in that first year and gives them that being part of a school and district community is critical to have those relationships while you're doing something that, as Dr. Provost said, is really hard your first few years. So year one is that induction and mentoring program. The components are a multi-day orientation. This is something that is an enhancement to the programming over the past few years. When we initially, the program had one meeting before school started, and then the mentor and mentee had a list of things and tasks to do, and they worked on them independently. We added 3 additional meetings throughout the year so that we could gather mentors and mentees, have them work on some of the requirements for the program, but also to develop a cohort that across the district so they could talk to people, hear what other teachers and mentors and mentees were working on. Just having that larger cohort is exciting. So the new teachers are assigned a mentor, preferably before school starts. Sometimes depending on when they're hired, it can be a bit tricky, but we want them to have the benefit of meeting with their mentor before school starts. And there's assignment, more of an identification of a support team for that mentee, so that the new teacher knows who are the go-to people and what are you going to go to them for. And another important component is release time to participate in peer observations. So here's that support team that I was just referencing. We engage in this activity on the first day of our mentoring group. The mentor-mentee work collaboratively to complete the chart. So you can see there's key roles that are listed, like the ETL in your building, the educational team leader, who's the speech and language pathologist, the school adjustment counselor, the special educator, school psychologist, behavioral specialist, ELL specialist. And so the mentor-mentee collaborate to complete this chart with people's names. And the mentor then introduces their mentee to all of those people and helps them know if you have a question about an IEP, you can ask the special educator. This is the person you could ask, or you could ask the educational team leader about when a meeting is coming. Such an important, when things get going in the school year and then you need help, sometimes it's hard to recall or know who to go to. So this is a very helpful tool for our mentees. You guys can feel free to jump in, whenever, just press the button so you can.
You want to take over?
So one of the things that really kind of evolved over the last several years, I've been a mentor in the district for about 7 or 8 years, but recently, with the induction program, there's been a lot of changes. One of them is really to not just observe your mentee and have them observe you, but to kind of take the show on the road, which has been really, I think, beneficial for all of the educators, because I get to go visit other classrooms and in other buildings or in my building with my mentee, and we can observe a veteran teacher together, and we can talk about what we saw, we can plan ahead about what we're looking for, and it really allows for some rich dialogue. And as a mentor, I'm not gonna lie, I pick up stuff that happens when I'm in there, and then it kind of spreads throughout the building. Other people are like, hey, I'm not a mentor, but I wanna go and observe each other, and we just know as educators that we grow that way. So that's one piece that I thought that really has evolved and has been a benefit.
Thanks, Jill. This is one of the, can you go back to that one, Aaron? This is just one of the resources that we share with in our orientation, our first meeting. And we continue to talk about peer observations, as Jill said, throughout the experience. Peer observation is a powerful tool for professional development. So it's not just for new teachers, for our veterans, but it's really valuable for the pair to go in to see one of their colleagues presenting a lesson. Maybe we're working a lot on a particular skill development or trying a certain practice, and we want to see how that person is working on it. It's one of the, I think, most important enhancements that we've added or just built up and made stronger, because it's so valuable. And I think we're not only using it in our mentor-mentee program, but many principals are saying, this is important for us to see, what does this look like at a different grade level or in a different building, or so it's a really powerful tool. So then for years 2 and 3, should say, that when our mentees are working toward achieving that 50+ hours of mentoring, we have a mentor focus group, and Terry's going to speak a little bit to that for us.
So I've been a mentor for many years in this district, but on a one-to-one basis, and I do love that. More often than not, you form a bond with the mentees that last for your entire career in the district. But what I'm really excited about are these new cohorts that we've formed. We're calling them the focus groups, and they're 4 to 5 new teachers. We meet together once a month. And the topics that we learn about together are driven by the mentees, and they're always having to do with how they're going to meet the needs of the kids sitting in front of them. So, for example, a teacher that we had last year really wanted to know how to support students with ADHD, or how to support students who are on the autism spectrum disorder. And we do 2 things. Once we develop our topics, one, we look for some research-based materials, articles, books to study together, but then we also look to our in-house experts, which we have many in this district. And if you want, here it is. So, for example, we've already had Josh meet with us to go over the new IEP. We've had Melanie Chalmers, who brought us through the entire process of having a child get tested, how to read those neuropsych reports so that you can support them in the classroom. We had Karen Shaw recently, same thing, how to support those kids on the spectrum in the classroom. And we're looking forward to a couple more experts for our last few meetings of the year. Danielle Dugree will talk about social emotional learning and its impact on academic success, and then Nan Roy will speak to our multi-language learners. Anyway, it's super exciting. We have a couple of members who are sort of the first ones to have gone through both, right? I don't want to put you on the spot, right? I guess I am.
Hi, my name is Frankie. So I have gone through the program with its entirety. So last year I started as a first-year teacher, and I can speak very highly about the program itself. I had a really fabulous mentor, and she changed the year completely for me, just having her support, and it was impactful. Things such as small as, I'll make these copies for you, to coming in and there was a brownie on my desk, you know. It's really impactful for a new teacher that's completely overwhelmed. Something that I spoke with Terry about that was really helpful was the allotted time. Because as a new teacher, you're looking at all of the things you have to do, and there's just not enough time. So having that specific time where you're going to sit down with your mentor and you're just going to dive into it, it just makes it feel much less overwhelming. And then for the part 2, I have kind of lost that time, that allotted time that I had with my mentor. But now I'm in a group with other educators where I'm not necessarily concerned about how to use the copier, but now I'm talking about really how to help my students directly. And really, now that my feet are on the ground, I can focus more about that. It's just, like I had also told Terry at the beginning, with our year 2 program, one of the first days we all met together, they said, what do you want to talk about? And it was refreshing because, of course, you have a long list of things that you want to talk about. So I really like that the dialogue was open and it was actually just truly what we need rather than just giving us PD that may not always apply to us. So the program was great. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Frankie. Just to add to that commercial, the mentor focus group, no, that we like to hear from our actual people that are working through it. Again, this year has a book study along with it, so we're reading Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. We're having guest speakers come in, and also as part of their year 2 and year 3, they're going to be coordinating some peer observations to continue that practice as part of their professional development. And they get to choose who they would like to observe. They can engage with one of us, with another person in the cohort, or anybody. It's up to them. They're choosing what makes the most sense for them. As Frankie said, you know, we want to know what you, the second and third year teachers, would like to work on and know more about. We learn so much information sometimes in our teacher prep programs. It makes a difference when you go back to it, when you have a class in front of you, have students, and it kind of contextualizes some of that trickier information and then you're able to put things into practice. So.
I have a question. Oh, sure. I'm wondering, first of all, congratulations. It's very well thought out, and it looks like it's really, really taken off. My question is that, in my experience, people coming from the outside who are teachers already, from other districts or from other states or, you know, whatever, is there a way to let them know about this, but not do the whole program, just come in where it makes sense to them because they're already professional?
Yep, thank you for bringing that up, because that's a different type of mentoring, but it's still something that we offer for teachers that are new to our district, but they have their professional license, they're a veteran teacher that come to us, but they don't know our district, they need to support in getting to know maybe their department at the high school or the middle school, or, you know, basic, more general orientation, curriculum, different assessments, how we run things in terms of professional development, a whole lot of information that it is important to have a go-to person. We want even veteran teachers coming to our district, we want them to have a go-to person so that they'll stay here with us.
Because I think, too, we often forget about the culture of the building. And you walk into a new building and it may not have been the kind of culture you were having at your old building, and you wonder if
Yeah, and it is all, as I said earlier, about creating the relationships, that making the connections, creating relationships, not only with your students, but with your colleagues, because you need to rely on each other. Super important. So that's a part of the mentoring program. They just don't participate in all of this work that we're doing. Erin, can you just show the next slide?
Actually, I can speak to that. So I am not a brand new teacher. I am a veteran teacher, but I was new to the district. I started during COVID and did not have a mentor, which was a very challenging time anyway. So remote, hybrid, all of that I did on my own, and that was challenging. Coming into a new building, not knowing anyone, stepping into a new role. In that time that I was there, I taught kindergarten, first grade, and second grade without a mentor. That's when we realized I didn't realize it at the time that was an option for me. So Lisa assigned me Jill as my mentor last year, which was an invaluable experience for me for a lot of the reasons Lisa just said. That I know what I'm doing. I didn't need the help there, but accessing certain parts of the curriculum or just certain ways that this district is run and things that we do. Jill was a really good asset to have there, helping with my contract, with licensing, just having someone to ask those questions to where you don't feel like you're a bother. And a lot of the time, you're busy all day long. You're go, 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 go. You don't want to pop in on someone's lunch break and be like, hey, can I ask you a question? But knowing that I could do that with her, I had that opportunity, was really great to be able to jot down those things I had. We had that a lot of time. And again, to speak to what Jill said, I wholeheartedly, 100% believe in the peer observation. It was the most valuable thing that I took from the entire program. I've since finished, but just being able to be in other people's rooms, see the way that they teach, behavior management, classroom setup, do you use rows, do you put them in groups? Oh, I like your ankle charts, that's what you put up for this subject. And then again, having taught across 3 different grade levels, being able to be in different classrooms and seeing how teachers teach those different grade levels was a great resource.
Thanks, Nicole. I did want to just review a few of the professional development topics that were generated from our mentee group. And there's a definite theme about they're wanting to know more about how to meet the needs of all their students. So, you know, we go from working through a disabilities overview, what are the disabilities that may pop up in your room, to really focusing in on what does anxiety look like in the classroom. As Terry mentioned, thinking more about autism spectrum disorder, social emotional learning, understanding our multilingual learners. So overwhelmingly, the topics that our group wanted to work on were learning more about our students and how can we best meet their needs by really understanding the strengths and their struggles that they bring. This is just our fabulous team here, and I wanted to just give you guys an opportunity to share anything else that you'd like to with the committee about your experience.
So maybe as a concluding part here, I am a mentor. My mentee is actually one of my former students. So I have pride in the fact that one of my former students decided to go into teaching, but also in seeing her, she's in the room right beside me, pops in my room every day, multiple times. I've got a silly question. I said, no question is silly, but it's just that constant connection that she knows that she can come to me whatever she needs. I'm learning through her, she's learning through me. And I know that when I started as a teacher many, many years ago, there wasn't a program like this. So we were kind of just thrown to the fire and it was like sink or swim. But this is such an amazing program so that we have these new teachers because they're going to be the future of this district. And this district has such a high expectation that we need to make sure those teachers are supported so they can continue to grow. Because like I said, a lot of us veteran teachers, we're not going to be teaching here forever. So we've got to put that faith in them and really help show them exactly what they need to be able to carry this district into the future. And I think that's what this mentor program does for us.
Thank you, Kristen. Any other last words? I do want to say that the mentor, working with these professionals and the rest of our mentors, it is definitely a highlight of my month when we get together for our focus group, when we get together with the entire mentor-mentees in the induction. The meeting we had a couple weeks ago was so exciting, invigorating, and I really enjoyed working with our mentors and our new educators too. You just feel that excitement. It makes me, miss the classroom and working with students a lot. You might have noticed our lighthouse theme. That's kind of what we branded to represent our induction mentoring. And I just want to read this quote to you that we refer to. I am a lighthouse rather than a lifeboat. I do not rescue, but instead help others to find their own way to shore, guiding them by my example. So, thank you very much for listening, and go team.
I do have a question for you. A brand new teacher who's either provisionally licensed or initially licensed, are you all trained in helping them navigate the process to get their professional license? Because there is so much on a new teacher's mind. That kind of stuff can slip away. And if there's not somebody reminding them of the steps they've got to take to make sure they're on track, it's very easy to lose sight of it because there's so much to learn when you first walk into a teaching position. And I know that from personal experience. So are all your mentors trained in the licensure process, or is there a go-to person that could answer that question so we make sure that they don't slip and fall behind?
Good questions. Our mentors are all complete a mentor training before they mentor. And I'm thinking about the actual steps of going through the licensure, and we do review what the requirements are in terms of completing the induction program and documenting those 50+ hours. So there's some conversation ongoing with the mentees about what their obligations are. So I don't know if any of you have worked through that process. Maybe you want to speak to it, Nicole?
So I am in that boat of going from one license to the next, and Jill, my mentor, is a great resource for that, and she has reminded me often the things I need to do, the steps I needed to take, my PDPs and this and that, and all the things that, like you said, kind of slip to the wayside when you're just really focused on your actual job and doing your job and not retaining it. So I would say that they're highly trained to be able to provide that information because she has at length for me.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad to hear that because it's very easy for a beginning teacher or a teacher switching areas of licensure to, as every good teacher, you put your kids first and let yourself kind of slide back. But that can be pretty dangerous for a teacher if they're not keeping themselves on track to get to that professional license. So I'm glad to hear you're dealing with that. Thank you for all that you do.
I just want to point out, I love it with true good mentoring programs. I always say, I'm sorry.
No, sorry.
Okay. I was saying that the first time that you go to someone, it doesn't want to be the time you're asking a question. So putting everyone in the room and saying, this is your team, like getting everyone invested in you, so that you meet everyone. And then when you have a question, you're going in and you already have that rapport. Hey, I met you, whatever. I learned a little bit about you. Now here's my problem. That is so critical. So great job on that. I do want to highlight that Frankie and Nicole, I believe, said about that you guys pick the topics of what you're talking about when you sit down with your groups. Like, this is what we need. This is the information that we want. That means that they're listening. And even what Jill had said before was that in some of the things that she does with you, she learns something too. It just shows like a great teacher is always learning, right, as well as teaching. And then Kristen, right, that you had a student that became a teacher and that you're mentoring them. I mean, that is like, I'm sorry, I geek out over that. That is like the best thing that could happen as a professional, that you taught someone in such a way that they came back to you, you're mentoring them to be a teacher. I mean, so giving, and that all falls on you, you know, Terry too. I mean, that you are putting your time in to helping new students so that when you move on out of the profession, your stamp is still there. You know, your love for the district, your love for the students. And I just want to thank you. This is really a wonderful thing, and I would hope that we could expand this and, you know, into maybe some students who've been here for a while that maybe need some help, you know, because like Jill says, always be learning, right? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. This is really great.
I have a few questions. So regarding the, I think my microphone is not working every time. Every meeting, it's not interesting what I have to say. So my apologies in advance. All right, so regarding the mentor selection and training, I wonder how mentors are selected and how they're trained. And then are there any qualifications or experience we're supposed to have? And if it's volunteer-based, how many volunteers do you typically get?
So we have a mentor training course, as I said, through Westfield State that mentors are asked to take prior to mentoring. So some of our mentors have been mentors for a very long time and have taken a course previously. We just asked them to update that after a certain amount of time. So they've been trained in the last 5 years. And mentor-mentee matching is really important. So I don't kind of, you know, pull names out of the hat. You know, we've heard feedback from mentors and mentees that it's helpful to be in the same building because you're learning, you're supporting someone in an environment that you feel really comfortable in. It's helpful if they're in a similar grade level. It's not essential, and some mentors and mentees say that doesn't matter to me, but we listen to that feedback. So, and I consult with the principals. The principals are the ones that kind of do this groundwork around assigning. So they're thinking about, here's a new, brand new math teacher, who better to then ask to mentor than chair of the math department, and so that kind of works out really nicely. It's important to find the right match, and principals do, as I said, do that work to make sure. Sometimes we do find mentors across district, and it's just a little bit trickier to manage, making sure that they can do peer observations and meet. But principals help find that time, find the coverage, and our mentors go above and beyond to make sure that they can reach that. Did I answer all the questions?
Yes,
Okay.
do a few more. Yeah. Regarding feedback mechanisms, so how is the progress tracked of the beginning teachers or even seasoned teachers? How is that tracked? And is there a formal evaluation process? And how would feedback be provided?
So tell me more about how the feedback is tracked.
Yeah, so I mean, tonight we have 2 teachers, one seasoned and one new teacher, and they clearly are reading about the program. But I mean, I would imagine that as the process continues, or maybe mentees that maybe are struggling or maybe don't have the same feelings as the 2 people that are sitting before us. So I just wondered how you're monitoring feedback, and is there a formal mechanism for feedback?
Yes, we provide a Google Form survey to ask those very questions, like what's working, what's not working, what do you need to spend more time on. I think one of the topics we spent a lot of time thinking about and discussing at the very beginning was how to give feedback, how to take feedback, and so that's a little bit different than what you were saying, but in order to help with that communication, that relationship, we wanted to spend some time thinking about those skills as well. As Terry said, we take the information, we use that information, we read over the feedback that our mentors and mentees give us and design programming for the next year based on that. So it's not kind of a cookie cutter, this is what we do each year. There's some core learning, and then we want to respond to the people in front of us.
Is this program available to the new teachers in the middle school or at the high school, or is this mainly in elementary?
Nope, it's K-12. Yep.
Any other questions? John?
Not a question, but a comment, just to, first of all, express my deep appreciation for all you're doing for our new teachers. It connects to the entry findings, and also something you said, Kristen. I was also going to say that that was an amazing story, but Mr. Kennedy took my words, so I won't. I'll just say that you're right, that there are a number of teachers who are kind of looking at upper end of the seniority scale here and looking to retire in the next several years. So this program, I feel, is critical for the future of the district. And what came up in my entry findings was, when you're a new teacher entering a building that is filled with very senior teachers, that can be a daunting environment. So I'm glad, and I'm hearing tonight, that you do things to make that less daunting for our new staff. So thank you for that.
I guess lastly, I'd also like to thank Josh, Melanie, Karen, Danielle, and Nan for also being guest speakers and supporters. What is this book here? It says Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's a good one?
That's the book the high school used that as a book study, and it was really well spoken about. So we are going through that, reading chapters of that book and doing some of the activities and having some pretty powerful conversations. So it's exciting.
Excellent. Thank you. Again, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So we will continue with the Assistant Superintendent for Finance Operations and Human Resources, Doug Sparr.
Good evening. So in your packet is a short memo from me talking about the current state of the budget at this point in the year, and I think the short story is that our budget's in good shape. We're not really worried about where we are as far as expenditure versus available resources. So I think we're on track. We're expecting to stay on track through the rest of the year. And so that's the brief and short news about that. As I note there, and this was something that the interim assistant superintendent mentioned in her last report, was around the providing information to our insurance company to see if they would reimburse us for some of the mold mitigation work that we had to do at the middle school, and so we're still waiting to hear back from them. So I'll probably give them a little nudge in the next week or so regarding that. The second piece of that memo is talking about the MSBA process. So once every 4 years, the MSBA essentially hires a company to come and do a survey of all the buildings in the Commonwealth, all the school buildings in the Commonwealth. How are you using? What is the state of repair? What are your needs? Where are things working, not working? Where you've got crowding? All those kind of things. They do a phone interview initially. They spoke with our district in December in that regard. Then they came out and do it in person, partly to clarify some of the things that they talked about on the phone calls, but then also to put eyes on and take photos of and see the buildings and their state of use and state of repair in a first-hand way. I had the great opportunity to go to each of the buildings. So that was helpful in my sort of induction to being a new employee in the district, to sort of see each of the buildings and the state of repair, go in some of the sort of back closets, as it were, and see what those look like, which most people don't get to see, and get a sense of where we are in our physical plan for all the buildings. So that happened over the last couple of weeks. The other thing I'll mention is just the way the MSBA is dealing with their two programs is changing a little bit starting this year. So they have a core program, which is an annual application process for either new construction or add renovation type projects. And then they have, for several years, had what's called an accelerated repair program, which is an ARP program, which is more focused on certain kinds of things: roofs, doors and windows. Used to be boilers. They're not doing boilers, so now they're doing heat pumps. This survey is part and parcel of that, but also I'll bring your attention to that MSBA process, that application process, because with the ARP, they're doing it every other year. So they'll take applications this year. If you don't submit an application this year, you'll have to wait till 2027 to submit. Their general timeline when they do an application for the accelerated repair is they're due in March. They review them in April and May, and you get into June. In July and August, they do site visits. They make recommendations to the MSBA board for their meeting in October, when they do awarding of projects and funding for projects. then they reach out to the communities and begin the process of actually starting projects. So it's a pretty lengthy process, but it's also one, given that they're going to an every other year model, that we will want to put in an application or applications. We'll navigate through that a little bit in the coming weeks, but we will put in applications for some of those repairs, because it's a pretty significant support that they provide to the district. And it is money that we've all paid into the system. You know, paying your sales tax is going to MSBA, and so some of that money is ours now, and we might as well get the benefit of that. So we want to take advantage of that and not have to carry some of those capital costs in their totality. I think we are in a circumstance like a lot of districts in the Commonwealth, in that we have buildings that are of the vintage of the late 60s, early 70s, and you know, we are like many other districts in that circumstance, and have significant capital needs around roofs and doors and windows and heating systems and that sort of thing. So it's going to be probably a pretty competitive application process. So we want to be sure to apply, because as they say at the lottery, you can't win if you don't play. So we want to be in the mix for that, and we're going to try to put our applications together. It will have some requirements of the school committee as we go through. You have to officially give authority to the superintendent to submit an application. And then there are some other steps that you have to do. Superintendent, the chair of the school committee has to sign the application, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll keep you in the loop as we get closer to that. I'll pause there and see if there are any questions about that before I go into the other piece.
I heard you say application and then applications. Is it our intention to put in more than one application, because we have several buildings that we're concerned about?
Yeah, I think that we'll probably put in it's at least 2. And you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I think it's a good segue into the next piece, which is the capital plan. We do have several projects that would be MSBA eligible that are in the plan. One of the things that we've done, just to sort of give you a framework of the way we're looking at it now, is to stagger those based on the every other year model for 2 reasons. One is it's highly unlikely to get 2 successful projects awarded to the same district in the same cycle. And second, it's a reimbursement project, which means the towns have to put up the money. And so just being mindful of their finances, it would be, I imagine, easier to manage the cash flow if they were doing a project and then getting the reimbursement and using that for the next project. And so maybe I'll turn it back over to you to talk about what the revised capital projects look like and see if that makes sense to you all, because we have another meeting coming up as a follow-up to the meeting that we had on capital plan. We got some direction from the town of Wilbraham, and actually from both towns, and made some revisions based on that. And so we're bringing those to you tonight for your review. And if you approve or want us to make changes, this would be what we would be submitting to the towns.
Can you quickly repeat when MSBA makes a decision?
So their board meets in October and makes their choices. And then the process of notification to the communities or regional school districts happens after that. And it's an involved process. But one of the things that you have to have in place are, approvals and authorizations for borrowing or appropriation of funds for the project. And it is reimbursement, so you do have to get authority for the full amount, even though they're going to give you some portion of it back. You do have to get authority to do the full borrowing or the full appropriation of funds. So speaking to the capital project, most of what's on what you see tonight in those 3 sheets that are in your packet are the same things you saw the last time. We grouped them a little bit differently, partly so we don't have quite so many pieces of paper, but we grouped things that are purely regional projects in one sheet, the ones that are Wilbraham specific, in another sheet, the ones that are Hendon specific in a third sheet. Most of the costs are the same. There are some places where we fine-tuned some of them a little bit, or in the IT area, we've got some better numbers there. And there were a couple in the IT area where we split them apart. So, if you look back at what you've got before, I think there was a switch replacement for like the high school building, and it was like $750,000 or something like that. And that's spread out over a couple of years because the there's two reasons for that. One is just to make the ask of each of the communities a little more spread out. The second is, there's just a raw implementation piece of getting the work done and sort of what can we do. Those are the kinds of things that are such an infrastructure interruption. You've got to do it when kids aren't around and they take a little while to do and that sort of thing. So there's that kind of planning. That's also in the physical projects as well. But you'll also see, some of these things that we'll ask for MSBA projects are placed in either fiscal 27 or 28. And the reason for that is because, again, if you think about the sort of MSBA process, when they notify you you've been accepted, and then when you actually go out to do the project and do the borrowing, is staggered after that. You tend to go do the borrowing and need the authorization for borrowing. You may go to town meeting earlier, but then the actual borrowing happens later. So that's part of how things get staggered as well. I think the key focus when we started to look at things that we wanted to ask for in fiscal 26, we want to focus on health and safety types of things or other needs that fall into that category. Those took and rose to the top as far as needing to be addressed most imminently for us, and that's why we selected the ones that we did. Things that impact the envelope of the building, which is like doors and windows that may need replacement, even though we'd love to get into a larger project. Some places we can do a few doors, and that's better and more helpful than necessarily doing the whole building. You'll see things like door hardware. It's a safety issue for door hardware because you want common doors. You want to make sure they're ADA compliant. You also want what's sometimes called the Columbine lock, which means they can be locked on the inside. They're not push button locks, that sort of thing. Just to give you a little sample, those are about $1,000 a piece, and if you go and count doors in the building, there's a lot of doors. So that's why some of those price tags are what they are, is because the numbers add up really, really fast. But again, the focus was to focus on health and safety types of things, higher imminent needs, spread things out as best we could to sort of spread the pain over a longer period of time, and then also think about the actual implementation of doing the work for these things. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have about what you're seeing there. And
I have a question. I'm not really up on finances too much. We didn't have a budget. But do you, anyway, is there any room in there for an override as opposed to borrowing?
Oh, I think in that regard, that's a conversation we're going to have with the town, the select boards and finance committees of the towns, and to see what their strategy for funding is going to be. Whether they do it direct payment and through like an override and direct payment, or through borrowing that they then fit within their existing capacity to tax the community. Is part and parcel of the conversation with them. I'm not presuming either or at this point, and it'll be part of the dialogue with them about what's our strategy to implement this work. And they're big ticket items, so it's difficult to just sort of have that much sort of cash on hand and not starve all the rest of your needs. So borrowings. I'll make a little bit of a philosophical statement here about borrowing. So I had explained to me once, by a finance director in another community, they were talking about borrowing. They said, well, one view of borrowing for some projects and paying for it over 20 or 30 years is because you're investing in an asset that gets used over a long period of time. And so you want some of the people that are getting the benefit of it 20 years from now to still be paying for that benefit, as opposed to putting that burden entirely on a single group of people in today's, environment. So it's more expensive because you have to pay interest charges, but it also shares the cost across many years with many more users of those facilities. So there's different philosophies about how to think about those and work through that. But back to your original question, we'll work with the towns on how best to get the resources together.
Because I know that in the past, if we don't bring up the possibility of an override, we kind of get dinged with it from the town. Why are we just hearing about this now?
Right. And I think that's part of laying out a plan that shows multiple years, and we sort of spread some things out. We're talking about the SBA process, and that requires some authorizations. So we want to start, sort of building those process steps and that calendar with the communities to get those in their planning, their thinking, their strategizing, whether it be about how to pass things at town meeting or do overrides or all of the above.
Thank you for this. Just a couple quick things. So I noticed that you have, for like minute jog, you have a 1, 2, and a 3 priority. And I'm just talking Wilbraham right now. And for the different facilities, you have different priorities, right? So if I just circled all the ones that were, priority 1, 2, or 3. And then on the minute jog page, there was the facilities related projects. I just put those all as for each year because there's so few of them, but I would think that they are priorities as well. I came out with, for Wilbraham, 1.731 million for this year that we're asking, and for Hamden, I have 112,000. That is something that we can go to and say, look, these are our #1 priorities for this year, and then we have other secondary priorities that we want, and we got to figure out where they come in, like the stadium seating, replacing the ACs, the multi-splitters, and the radios, etc., into the system. But at least it gives us, and I can work. I'll put this together. Thank you for sharing this with me, and I'll put it together in a different way, because I think that if we present it to the towns, this is what we need now, and these are some other things in case there's other monies or something that's available. I know that we were at the Finance Committee meeting for the town of Wilbraham, and they do have a $4 million good guy coming by this year, so that might be something that some of this money can be put towards. But that's a better way of pitching it. Like, here's the things as a district that we're looking for, instead of dividing it all amongst the schools. I think that's an easier way. I think that was how they were asking for it, but I understand a little bit on why they were asking for that.
Yeah, and one of the things, so when we originally put this together, sort of building by building, that priority number was put in there sort of relative to that building. And I think, when we sort of rearranged this and we were looking at sort of shifting the numbers across multiple years, and so you'll see some things that have a number attached to them that may have been bumped out a couple of years.
Right.
It doesn't diminish our urgency around that. It just, or the level of need, I should say, but it does change the sort of immediacy and urgency around it, or emergency around it. So I think I didn't tweak those a little bit. I think that's an area we can refine. And again, that would be, part of that's a question of sort of professional expertise. I want to check in with our facilities director a little bit more and the superintendent a little bit more to kind of retune those numbers a little bit. So if you're feeling that some of the feedback was, grouping them by building keeps it coherent.
That's good for
us. Building, right?
Right.
But for their purposes, I understand what you're saying. It's like,
and give them a year 2.
What's sort of 1 to 15? If you have 15 things listed in this year, how do we stack those into like one short list of the 15 things you're asking for this year? So we can collapse the list in that format and think about highest to lowest even within the current fiscal year. The other thing that will happen, and it's probably worth part of the conversation with the capital groups at the towns is they may fund certain things at a different level of funding. So we may have asked for, say, $100,000, and they said, well, we can't give you 100, we can give you 70. That's also part of that conversation, because some things can be done in segmented ways, some things cannot. So that's part of it.
And when you give 10 years out, that's a little overwhelming. That's good for us to have our 10 years. But when we share it with them, we say year 1, year 2, year 3. This year, next year, and the year after, this is what we're looking for. And so they can plan accordingly. Yeah, I think we can take care of year 2. Year 3 might be a struggle, or year 1 might be a struggle, but we can, work with them on that. And then if there's anything extra, we always have that, here's the B list of stuff. I mean, everything needs to get done, but on the urgency, we want the things that are urgent to be on the front burner.
Yeah, I think the way I always like to think about these is fiscal 26 is the one that's got the most level of precision, and everything after that has, and the further you get from the current or the coming year, it's less and less sure, both from a price standpoint and also urgency. I mean, there might be things that are on there that come off the list altogether because we decide not to do them. Something else may intervene in a way that inserts itself that we don't anticipate at this point. But it's sort of a universe of projects, and again, you know, some places do a 5-year capital plan, some used to do a 10-year capital plan. You know, once you get past about year 2 or 3, it starts to get really fuzzy, but I think it's important to keep certain things. So like you'll see on the high school, the replacement of the turf field. That's a pretty aggressive replacement schedule. Some of them last longer or not, but to have the fact that it needs to be replaced and it's not, you know, it's not every year and it's not 20 years is important to sort of see as a placeholder. You know, and you know, we'll get better and more refined with that as we go along. But yeah, I appreciate that, and we can definitely take this and sort of do a much shorter list. It's like, here's what's 26, and here's what's highest to lowest as best we can determine.
You know, I wanted to make a comment before you shorten the list. I really like what you've done, handing things out. I think we need to not lose perspective that there's been a real tendency over the years to kick the can down the road. You know, capital needs come up, but they don't all get funded. They don't all get taken care of. And then what happens is, you know, I mean, there's a lot of capital needs, and a lot of the things on this list are things that I think more so Wilbraham than Hamden have kicked the can down the road. And the way that you've done this with the years out, I'm hoping that it helps us hammer home the message for them to understand the long-term implications of continuing with the strategy of kicking these expenses down the line. Because, you know, there's always going to be new capital needs coming up. And if we don't take care of the buildings, you know, we're not going to be able to meet the educational mission for the children. And you know, so I like what you've done, and the farther out it goes, the better. And I think it's fine for them to get loud and choke on a 10-year plan for capital needs, because I mean, it's a real picture, you know, and something. I like what the statement you're talking with the town about, a plan for financing, because the capital needs that exist are not going to be able to be financed through the current method that they've been using, particularly for the last 5 years, where they only use, particularly for Wilbraham, they only use free cash from the year before to fund the capital needs for the entire town, including the schools. And the town also has important capital needs that need to be met as well, outside of the school district. And so there needs to be a rethinking and a planning for this. And there was some talk about that last year that never came to fruition. Anyway, that was a comment that I make on that. So I really like it. Good job.
I think my thoughts highly align with what you just said. Also, I know that at times, even if things have been reported in sheets, they can be surprising, and so I think it's helpful to have sort of the trail. And so one thing that I was thinking of when I was hearing Mr. Kennedy speak is maybe we presented both ways. I wonder if, you know, if we do the first 3 years, these are, you know, like the short-term needs, and then also as an attachment or something, say here's the complete plan so that you can see what's coming. Would that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think both of them, it's a complete picture. And just so you know, so I did the numbers again, just so for Wilbraham, if we did everything that was under FY26, that's $6.216 million.
And that's right. And that is less than it was last time because we pushed some things out. And I wanted to make something that explicit that won't be noticed unless I mention it. We have within here 3 MSBA cycles. As Doug was saying, the repair program now is running on an every other year cycle. So if we take the assumption that it's going to run that way for the next foreseeable future for this plan, we have built in 3 MSBA projects. So the first one you'll see is coming up in FY27. That is the, sorry, I believe that's correct. Yeah, coming up in FY27, that is a mile tree roof replacement. That should be a eligible project. And then we have, what's that?
2.75 million.
Yeah. Also in 27, sorry, no, that was the project for that year. Then in 30, there is another project coming up.
Shouldn't it be in 2029, if it's in every other year?
It's offset by a year, so I'll ask Doug to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think we were thinking that if they're accepting applications in 29, we would be needing the money in 30.
Right.
And then we have one in...
Wait, what was that one? What was the second one? I didn't.
We've got... I'm
First
sorry.
one was the
I'm
Mile
sorry.
Tree.
I'm sorry. Let me back up. Let me back up. I want to correct what I said. 2028 would be the first cycle. So if we submit next year, or and then get the approval, we would need the money in 2028. And so, is that correct?
That's right. So I think that the Mile Tree roof is actually should be out in 28 instead of 27. Okay. I'll make that correction. I was noticing that actually right as we were coming to the meeting.
Okay.
Because, and there's another one in that as well, which is the...
It's the middle school.
Yeah, I think it's the middle school.
And so I guess this is, and that is 2 million on exterior doors, 2 million for windows. And so I guess that brings up a question. So should we try to do Mile Tree in the same year, or should we move that to a different year? Because I'm not sure we'd get two in the same year.
Maybe what we do is
we can always apply, and then they have given advice to the
subcommittee. Excuse me, when we just bring this to the subcommittee, finance subcommittee, we can hammer this out a little bit, bring it back to the full committee with a timeline. Does that sound doable?
Do we have a deadline when we need to present this to the town?
We did say we would do it at the beginning of this year, January or February, so I would like to give it to them in that time frame. Is that okay?
When is our next subcommittee meeting?
That was something I was going to talk about when we talk about subcommittee meetings. I'd like to have one next week to talk about the agenda for the roundtable, and then as well as looking at this information here and putting more like a timetable, setting up, making up a real plan for this.
So I would just like, I guess that makes sense to me. My question is, just sort of, this is posted as a potential vote. Does that make sense to the committee to approach it that way? And like, do you like the general direction we're heading in so that we can keep sort of working on this, or do you see any major changes that you'd like us to adjust to?
I'm seeing major changes, I think, in getting the timing right and making sure the pricing is correct. Some of these prices, I've seen the same pricing for the last 3 or 4 years, and they can't be the same pricing. I mean, things have really increased, so I think we need to dig down on that as well. What was that?
I said, or decreased in high tech.
Or decreased, yeah, with some of the technology. And I know we have the E-rate program also for technology, and if we get reimbursed through E-rate, unfortunately how it works is you have to, I think you have to like buy the equipment first, and then they let you know, okay, yes, you qualify for E-rate and you get the money back. But then that's something that we can put onto the next year as a, a negative, a good guy. Like this is, the next, and then keep pushing that.
So I had a good conversation with Bill Powers about this a little bit, and so, my advice to him was like, yes, apply for the E-rate funds. They'll determine whether it's an eligible expense. The timing of purchasing may be coincidental with appropriation from the towns. So if they approve one of those IT, things in April, May, when they do town meeting, the money will be available July 1. About that same time is when E-rate will come back and say, yes, you've been awarded, blah, blah, blah. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. One is we can just say, oh, well, it didn't cost as much as we said it was. Here's the money back. You can reappropriate it to whatever purpose you want, whether it be another capital project, which is what you would like, or something else. The other approach you can take is if you write the description of the capital sufficiently broadly for the purposes of authorization and appropriation at town meeting, then you can essentially have it cover another project. And so the nice thing about capital funding is that it's persistent over multiple fiscal years. So if you have a broad definition of what you're doing, so a perfect example of that is like the high school with the replacing switches. Well, we took a $750,000 project and split over 3 years. Well, if we write that as switch replacement at the high school and leave it pretty broadly defined, we're not being disingenuous about what we're purchasing with that. If we get E-rate money to cover, then it allows us to cover more of those others, and they'll come off the list.
Oh, no, I get, and that's what I'm trying to say, is that you want to show the town that we're going after grants, we're going after E-rate, we're going after whatever money that we can get. And we asked you for $1 million, let's say we get $400,000, and we're going to take that $400,000 and apply it to next year's capital expenses. So now we're already $400,000 ahead, and just keep rolling that. And I was talking with Todd last night about that. And, he said, if you just lay it out and let the town know and just be above board, that's what they want.
Absolutely. MSBA falls in the same category.
Yeah.
They authorize for the full amount.
Exactly.
And it's like, look, and actually one question I'm going to reach out to the MSBA about is, for our district, what is the reimbursement? And they can only give you a sense of what the current one is. They, when you actually get in the program, it's a year or two from now, and they do a deep dive as to the literal reimbursement rate, but they can give you a sense of that, because someone posed that question. I was in a webinar with MSBA about the current application process, and they were, so we posed that question. It's like, how do I find out what it is? We need that number to kind of make the case to our community.
The community wants to know that we're hunting for money that,
exactly.
It's not like just give us the money and we're going to buy this stuff. We're going to try to,
find offsets.
Yeah.
Listening to this conversation, I wonder if it would make sense to put the MSBA potentially eligible projects on one track, because you have, let's say, 50% of the money that would be recycled from one project to the next project, and just sort of show how that can domino, and then do the rest of them on a separate track. Is that kind of the thing you're looking for?
Let me play with it. I'll show it with you, and you tell me if you like it or not. We can go from there. Thank you.
So just for the entire committee to be involved in the conversation, are you okay with the direction that they presented and going in? Just making sure that we have consensus from the entire committee.
I just wanted to ask a question. I just saw how many cameras are in the $750,000 for cameras?
I think it's all of them, but I'm not. I think what we have currently is a camera system that's been constructed over multiple years, and so there's not a lot of harmony, I guess would be one way to describe it, and some difficulties with operating it. So this would be a wholesale replacement of both the cameras, and maybe as much or more importantly is the sort of video management that happens in and around the camera. So it's one thing to get the physical devices that all play nice with the central core software, but it's getting that core software that gathers that data, retains it for the time period that we want it to be held for, gets rid of it when it's old, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all part of the parcel.
That's an example of things where there's legacy companies trying to sell legacy products at really expensive prices. I could buy 15,000 high definition cameras on Amazon Prime Day for that amount of money. That's like 3 cameras per kid and the thing. So I know it's a lot bigger and the software and everything else, but things are not that expensive and they last a long time. You can throw them away and replace them. So the question is looking at modern things, not the legacy companies for security. Even homes, they want to come in and charge you X dollars and put all the sensors on the windows. Not needed anymore. They do it by sound, they do it by speakers, they do it by so many different ways for a fraction of the cost. So,
going in. I like your idea of the separate track, John. I visualize it's probably actually all going to be in the same spreadsheet, and there's going to need to be another column because one plan for funding mechanism is not going to take care of everything, right? So there's going to be multiple plans for funding mechanisms, okay? Some of these things are going to have to be taken care of by bonds, okay? Money borrowed by the towns to take care of it. There's no way that they're going to have the cash on hand to take care of all the stuff. So some things are going to be taken care of from free cash or cash on hand. Some things are going to be lumped together as a bond to be taken care of. And so, we can keep track of that so that everybody knows what's happening, what's going on. So, the people in towns deserve, transparency. And of course, then it also gets more complicated with Minichog, right? Because if there needs to be bonding done for Minichog capital, then we need both towns to agree to the debt, but I believe we end up taking, the school district takes out the bond, right? Right. But that can't happen unless both towns agree to the debt.
So, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I'm just very concerned about all the kicking down the road with this can. It makes no sense to me because when you don't invest your capital and you defer your maintenance, what we've done is defer the maintenance of these buildings, and it's getting more and more expensive. The mold problem in the middle school, had we put projects in some years back, probably never would have happened. So, I think pushing forward with this as strongly as we can, because the more time that goes by when you've got renovations, especially doors, windows, and roofs, if the envelope of a building is deteriorating, things inside the building are deteriorating, and the cost gets higher and higher the more you delay it. I think it was totally irresponsible not to be doing this years ago, but we got to catch up with that. I'm also very concerned, and it's kind of off topic here, but we need to do something to add additional seats in middle school, whether it's an addition or a new building or something, because there's no way we're going to be able to expand and put hands-on learning back in the middle school and the high school with our current space. I know I'm kind of a dog on this, but I'm not going to let it go. I think these kids deserve that. It's just amazing to me that MCAS is focused every school district on sending every kid to college. And that just doesn't make sense. Kids that have this, you can't get a plumber today. The average age of a licensed plumber is in the 60s. We're not only hurting ourselves, we're hurting our future if we don't start valuing that type of learning and making sure kids get exposed to it, because there are some kids that is their style of learning. But if they never get exposed to it, they don't even realize that's an opportunity that they could have for their future life and income. And I think we're falling short on that, and I won't say it anymore. I know I'm repeating myself. That's an old middle school teacher's problem. You keep repeating yourself.
Okay, I too am happy with the direction, and I think obviously there's just some refinement that has to be done with some of the numbers and making sure that we're adding the additional information that the towns are looking for. But that is something that sounds like we can talk about at our next budget and finance meeting, which we'll find out about when we get to our subcommittee. So, anything else for your report? What you'd like to share? Okay, any additional questions for Doug? Okay, so we will move on. It is now time for public comment. We will call on those who have signed up for public comment. We do ask that when called, you go to the microphone and make sure that you press the button at the end of that table. Please state your name and your affiliation with the district, and sit at the designated location and speak for up to 2 minutes. If you have any documents that you would like to share with the committee, please hand them to Erin Dowding before you begin. Lisa Murray is going to be monitoring time, so she'll signal you or you'll hear her alarm once your 2 minutes is up. And just for school committee members, please remember that this is public comment. We will not be responding back. Okay, thank you. So the list, let's see.
I believe Georgina Trevi, you're the first person. Thank you.
And for the learning experience, I have Mr. Bobby White, who's my practicum student. So he's learning how to be a licensed school library teacher. I would like to indulge the chair that if I go over, if I could just have 1 more minute.
Okay, as long as you speak into the microphone.
Absolutely. Thank you. Although I don't necessarily need All right. So I'm Georgina Trevi, the licensed school library teacher here at Minnetonka Regional High School, and I'm talking to you from that capacity. My big ask is for the school committee to consider supporting hiring of licensed school library teachers for elementary and middle schools. Currently, there are no licensed school library teachers in any HWRSD K-8 schools. Although I am the high school librarian, unless a teacher chooses to collaborate with me, an HWRSD student can go through our K-12 system, never really understanding the value of libraries, or school library teachers. So just let me share. Imagine teaching students about reading and research. When we're asked questions about using either public or school library resources, no one raises their hands. This is happening now. Imagine you have to define words like silo, which I use that word all the time, or reword a concept because students have limited experience with robust vocabulary or complex sentence structure. To me, this is heartbreaking because even without a library, such as in the case of WMS, the resources are available through state funding with a licensed school library teacher. In today's world, the role of the licensed school library teacher is vital to K-12 student success in reading, digital, media, and information literacies, as well as understanding the research process that guides each student to argue a specific point using supportive evidence from multiple perspectives. Champions of books and reading, licensed school library teachers understand the complexities of curating a diverse and engaging collection that supports the curriculum, as well as fosters a passion for reading. School library teachers are trained to purposely select, purchase, and create accurate records that connect readers with their interests. They are also educators who guide students to make personal connections with books, with the writing of the book, the article's information, to other students, to their communities, to the world, all while asking them to ask deeper questions to help to develop curiosity and ignite the imagination. These connections matter when the expectation is for students to become informed contributors to our democratic society. All of our K-12 students deserve these learning opportunities that come with a licensed school library teacher. But licensed school library teachers are not simply custodians of the books. We are educators with teaching degrees who are skilled at teaching information, digital, media, and computer literacy. We are co-teachers with the know-how to strategically plan lessons and assessments with content teachers while using or teaching technology integration. It is imperative that students learn these literacy skills vertically, adding age-appropriate content and expectations each year within the K-12 system. HWRSD students should enter Minnetonka knowing how to search a library catalog, understand where to find a book citation information, know what an index is or a table of contents is, or understand how to make notes, develop an outline, and write annotations. Most importantly, students need to develop enthusiasm and a love for reading or listening to an entire book. Reading grade-level books, articles expose students to rich vocabulary and complex sentences, and build communication skills. These skills should begin as soon as children touch a book. Our WRSD students should enter Minnetonka knowing what a subscription database is and what search engines are, understand how to write research questions and support the use of advanced research, understand what makes a piece of information credible and authoritative, determine the relevance of a piece of information, how to support an argument with evidence, and respectfully give credit to an author or creator. These skills should begin when students are asked to look up information or told to just Google it or go research. HWRSD students should enter Minnetonka knowing the difference between a web page, a website, how to create clear and persuasive slide presentations, how to properly present, decipher facts from opinion, be skeptical of information, define mis-dis malinformation, and understand online ethics that shape digital citizenship. These skills should begin as soon as students are introduced to any online device. These are the skills licensed school library teachers are capable of teaching and supporting. Finally, the American Association of School Librarians and the Massachusetts School Library Association both call for effective school library programs in Massachusetts, staffed by licensed library school teachers to offer equitable access to a collection and other resources for all students. Currently, our K through 8 students do not have equitable access to state-funded resources. They are missing out. Using DESE statistics, which I do post, the top K through 8 MCAS scoring districts, which is about 10%, all have licensed school library teachers in their K through 12 programs. In conclusion, school library teachers are essential members of the educational community. They nurture a love of learning, cultivate critical thinking skills, empower students to become successful learners. And so I ask you to please consider supporting additional licensed school library teachers for our K through 8 students. Thank you.
Could you send that to us?
Yeah, I have a copy.
Thank you.
Next, I have Christine Grunin.
Thank you. My name is Christine Goonan, and I'm speaking tonight as a Hampton Willingham Education Association Vice President of Pre-K to 8. Changes were recently announced at Mile Tree School and Sioux Road School. The HWEA played a role in prompting some of those changes and wants to add some perspective to what was announced. On December 17th, the educators and service providers at Mile Tree School took a vote of no confidence in their principal. 73% of those staff members voted. Those included staff who worked in multiple buildings, but did not include teachers without professional teacher status and paraprofessionals who were new. Of the 73 who voted, 90% voted no confidence. The vote did not come out of nowhere. Union representatives and individual staff members made efforts over more than 2 years to address problems and frustrations with the leadership. Staff are not adequately supported, especially about an increase in volatile and at times violent student behavior. Staff experience a lack of trust, respect, and responsiveness from their principal. The concerns of staff had been brought to the attention of the superintendent. Staff members approached the HWEA this fall saying that their frustrations were higher than ever and that attempts at communication were being met with defensiveness and evasion rather than substantive responses. The HWEA gathered information confidentially for over a month to make sure the claims had merit and were widespread. Once we felt sure of that, we organized a meeting for the whole staff. At that meeting, a motion was made to have a vote of no confidence. There was thorough discussion of what that vote means. The motion to hold the vote passed, and the vote was conducted. Again, 90% voted no confidence. In addition to adding more perspective to what has been announced, we are speaking up because the handling and response to the vote has made the situation worse. The plan the superintendent implemented is allowing an unhealthy work environment to persist and even worsen in some ways at Mile Tree School. The solution also now entangles Sioux Road School and creates a tense situation where one did not previously exist. Thank you.
Thank you. Damian Conklin.
Damian Cogley, HWEA President. I want to provide a broader context for the activities of the HWEA, including speaking tonight. In June of 22, HWEA sent a letter to the school committee with results of a no confidence vote in the then Director of Student Services. The school committee referred the issue to the superintendent. Over the course of 1.5 years, he implemented a plan. Improvements were marginal and staff continued to leave. Shortly after 3 of the intensive resource room teachers resigned mid-year, we also learned that the Director of Student Services would be leaving. Subsequently, You know the district received the results of a DESE audit into our student services that identified many areas that the HWA brought to the attention of the previous and current superintendent. In short, we previously went through a long process of trying to professionally address problems and eventually conducted a vote of no confidence. In that case, an independent audit confirmed what our teachers, service providers, and paras have been saying for years. In the current case, the superintendent has had the opportunity to investigate and be more involved. I know I brought this to his attention several times over the previous 2 years. I reported to him that Mile Tree staff felt the survey they completed last year was unproductive. He also had information about transfer requests and resignations he could have pursued. Incidentally, the process around exit interviews probably should be reviewed. This December, the HWA shared with the superintendent a confidential detailed document of more specific experiences. I know he also has heard from some who disagree. However, faced with all that information, he has not looked into it adequately, to the detriment of everyone who works there. We are speaking now because keeping quiet and trying to be more discreet in the past did not work well. The plan for moving forward avoids, minimizes, or dismisses what educators are saying. It would be naive to think that the experiences of Mile Tree staff could be ignored by their colleagues at Sewell Road. He now faces a second elementary school being disrupted, and this includes a plan that delays a permanent replacement for a class of 5th graders. I'm speaking tonight to assure you that the HWA has not acted lightly or hastily. This is the first time we are speaking publicly, but we are speaking out because our members do not feel like they are being heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison Pettit?
Good evening. My name is Allison Pettit, and I am the principal at Mile Tree School. I have been the principal at Mile Tree for the past 3 years. During this time, the Mile Tree team has accomplished so much together, a lot more than I have time to list now. As a result of this hard work, we have seen ourselves and our students grow tremendously each year. I have worked closely with Superintendent Provost over these years to continue to reflect and grow as an instructional leader. I have received all fully proficient evaluations. Recently, the Unit A and C teachers and staff moved forward with a vote of no confidence in my leadership. Concerns were raised regarding communication, decision-making, staffing, relationships with staff and families, and lack of self-reflection. In meeting with the HWEA president to discuss, I wondered if membership would have interest in working with me to address the concerns brought forward through the vote and continue our work together, given that I had never received any complaints or grievances from any of the teachers or staff. It was made clear to me that the membership was not interested in pursuing this option. I wondered how we could continue this great work without the willingness to work together. This setback prompted me to reflect very deeply on where my professional journey needed to go to allow me to be fulfilled in my work. It is difficult to describe the amount of time, energy, thought, and emotion spent reflecting. I was able to arrive at the decision to step away from a leadership role and look for a position that put me back in the classroom, bringing me back to the reason that I became a teacher. I began to seriously consider applying for the 5th grade teaching position at Sewell Road that had opened up. I considered how this position would allow me to teach the curriculum that I have been learning so much about over the past 3 years, how teaching at a new grade level would continue to challenge me to learn and grow, and how this position would allow for me to remain in our school district where I live, where my children go to school, and where I have made so many wonderful connections with students and families. I applied for the position through School Spring and was offered a chance to interview. I was interviewed by a committee led by Dr. Parsons, the Sewell Road principal, and was offered the position. I am honored to accept and be given the opportunity to learn and grow with students again. This is truly what I am most passionate about, and I am so fortunate to be able to join the amazing team at Sewell Road. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here that was not able to sign up for public comment that is interested in making a public comment this evening? Okay, thank you very much. So we are going to continue subcommittee updates, and we'll start with the curriculum subcommittee. Lisa?
Oh, sorry.
No, nothing to report.
Okay, excellent. Planning Subcommittee, I'm going to turn this over to John.
Thank you, and I will direct you to the two memos in your packet, the January 21st memo and the January 23rd memo. I did, as some of you know, I was at a DESE training today in Worcester and was able to contact Attorney Sweeney during that training and have some feedback from him regarding these two memos and some of the content in there. So, moving to the 21st memo, you can see what I have done in this memo is provide responses to each of the bullet points in Michelle Griffin's December 23rd email. Attached to that memo is also a revised version of the proposed amendment to the regional agreement. This takes out all of the language that was in before about decisions that need to be made, because now those decisions are made. I also have numbered all the paragraphs so that you can easily reference the changes that are in Michelle's email. So first part of her email is a section called General Comments. One of the things that she said is this version of the agreement we have is a little bit difficult to follow because there are all these determinations that need to be made by the school committee. Now those determinations are made, so I think there's really no response to that other than the goal will be to provide this attached version of the agreement to her as the one that reflects the decisions made by the school committee. There are a few more decisions to be made based on the email that she sent, and so I anticipate some further revisions to that, but that basically takes care of the first general comment. Moving to the preamble, one of her office's suggestion was that the preferred language option concerning where students attend school be included in a separate section of the preamble. This is, perhaps the new section could be added to address this, as well as the language we recommended for moving in section 3 below. And so what I had written there is, if accepted, the new language in paragraph 1 would be moved to section 3. We had a similar thought as we included the same language in paragraph 11, which is part of section 3. We could simply make no changes to the preamble and preserve the new language in paragraph 11. This is one of the things that Attorney Sweeney advised against. He thinks that we're better served to keep the language about where students will attend school in section 3 and not add it to the preamble. This is one of the things that I see as a suggestion. They phrase it as a suggestion rather than as a mandate. And so I guess the first question for school committee is, do you want to move the paragraph to the preamble or do you want to keep it where it is?
I say keep it where it is.
Agreed.
Can you clarify, John? So Attorney Sweeney was recommending that we do listen to them or we don't listen to them?
That we don't take this suggestion.
Okay, I'm on board with that.
Okay. Moving on, her next comment is in the second paragraph. If you'd like to make a note of the various amendments to the agreement, please clarify that the original agreement was initially entered into 1956. An amendment to expand the district to K-12 was approved in 1994. I had given two options to this. One was to simply eliminate the chronology, or one was to give the full chronology going all the way back to 1956. This is something that Attorney Sweeney and I also spoke about this afternoon. He strongly prefers option 2 because it tells the whole story.
All right, then option 2 it is in my eyes.
I support that as well. Do we need to vote on this or?
Do you want me to make motions or?
I would guess if there's consensus on these, we could just do a single vote at the end that has them all.
Okay.
If we agree with all of our attorney recommendations, then we can make a vote to
Super.
agree with what we were advised by our counsel.
Okay, so then moving on to section 2, it says, We've talked about this many times. The agreement must address the way the committee is selected. The committee composition does not comply with the one person, one vote principle. The U.S.
Sorry, do you mean
Constitution.
section 1?
Sorry. Yes. What is it?
You said section 2, I thought you said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right, I just want to make
Not
sure.
section 1.
Yeah.
Correct. So I believe we addressed all those issues. As you know, there were 3 options for compliance with the one person, one vote rule. The school committee chose one of the options that was recommended by the Office of Regional Governance. Attorney Sweeney did have a suggestion on this as well. He said, if we want to make it even clearer that we're implementing the weighted vote option, we could insert the word weighted in paragraph 4. So now if you turn to the draft agreement in section 4, paragraph 4, section 1, and you go to the second highlighted sentence, I think the recommendation would be to make this first sentence, the second highlighted sentence, every member shall be entitled to one weighted vote at all school committee meetings, and then the rest of it talks about how the weighting will take place. So
Yeah, that's fine. Everyone good?
then the next comment she made was that even though we made it clear in our last version of this that it would be clear to voters that candidates would not be seated until July 1st, that the statute also says it should be made clear to the candidates. And so what I had suggested is some language regarding that, just to revise that sentence, so that the sentence would become, every candidate for the office of school committee will run for election to serve for a 3-year term of office to begin on July 1st in the year in which they are elected and continue until their successors are duly elected, qualified, and seated. It will be made clear to the candidates, that would be the addition, and on the ballot, that the term of office shall commence on July 1st of the year in which the election is held.
Yeah, sounds good.
Anyone have any questions?
The next comment was in 1C, we recommend including authority to appoint subcommittees. And so then I said, if this recommendation is accepted, I would recommend using language from school committee policy BDE in the agreement. That is the policy that describes how the school committee creates subcommittees. So one possible way to address this comment would be just take this language from the policy. The school committee shall appoint members to subcommittees at their annual organizational meeting for a period of 1 year. These subcommittees may be created for a specific purpose and to make recommendations for committee action.
Would it be maybe easier just to refer to the school committee policy BDE, or is that not possible in an agreement like this?
I don't know. I guess my feeling is, since the rest of this also is referring to a number of other laws and policies, but taking out the key language, taking out the
I'm
key
just
language
thinking
might be
if the
simpler.
language changes in the future, we wouldn't necessarily have to update the regional agreement because we just update the policy.
Or maybe you could say, how about the school committee shall appoint members to subcommittees according to their policy on subcommittees?
You can just leave it the way it is. It's the policy, and if we have to change it, we have to change it.
I bet you Jesse won't go for referencing the policy because, the regional agreement is like carved in stone, and the policies, we can change them every single year.
Yeah, I got you. Thank you. Yeah, that's fine.
Fine with everyone?
Is everyone, anyone have any questions?
Okay, the next comment is, our committee is limited to the numbers of years they serve, so this should be addressed in the agreement. There are no term limits, so I don't think anything needs to be done with that.
Okay.
Moving on to section 3, the leasing provision under other could be located here since the heading indicates the location of the schools. And so my suggestion there is, if this recommendation is accepted, paragraphs 43, 44, 45, and 23 should move to section 3.
Everyone okay with that? Okay.
Okay, the next is, we recommend including language in section 3 regarding the assignment of students to schools outside enrollment and vocational to a separate section, perhaps with the language in the preamble noted above. You might consider language regarding the intention of the towns regarding the assignment of students to particular schools, but providing exceptions and giving the authority to make a different decision that is then is contemplated by the agreement, perhaps with a higher bar, for example, a 2/3 vote of the majority, or after some other process. This was something that was discussed by the planning committee and not viewed favorably by them.
Yeah, during the planning committee, I was one nay on this, where I thought that we should put something in case of an emergency to have to process, say, a school burns down in one town or the other, and we decide to move some students. But I think the overwhelming majority said that it's a kind of a given that if there's a tragedy and the building burns down, that you're going to find some other place to move the students.
Any other questions or thoughts on that? Because the feeling was that the district has an obligation to educate the students, regardless of whether or not there was an emergency. Everyone's okay with that? Okay.
So we won't do anything with that. Okay. Next, in section 3C1, consider that IEP team makes determinations regarding the placement of students with disabilities, not the committee. This is the section that talks about how students can be educated in schools other than the ones in which they would be located. The current language of the agreement kind of makes it seem like the school committee is in charge of that. And so the recommendation is to clarify that that's actually a team decision. So my recommendation there is, if you accept this recommendation, paragraph should be rewritten as follows. Paragraph 12 should be rewritten as follows. Students with special needs receiving services under the provisions of Chapter 71B of the MGL as amended shall attend schools within the district consistent with the placement determinations made by their IEP teams. And then it says appear there are typographical errors in the section. For example, section numbers. I'm not sure what that means. There are only 3 sections. They're numbered 1, 2, 3. I know there's a margin issue there, which I couldn't get out, but I don't really think there's anything substantive there. Okay. Okay.
Can you fix the margins?
We will try our best. Okay. Next, while this will depend on the options that are included and related to where students attend school, would you want in the language 3C3 to allow the committee to assign all students in all grades in the case of an emergency? This is kind of another version of the conversation we just had. Again, this was not viewed favorably by the planning committee.
Yeah, I was for having some language again, but the overwhelming majority said no.
Any additional feedback?
If there's an emergency, we'll just do what we need to, and I guess if they want to, they can sue us later.
Right. Okay.
Okay, section 3E says the option 5 change may require an amendment to be approved before December 31st of any given year for a following July 1st start date to make necessary adjustments in Chapter 70 as well as town and district's budgets. This is, option 5 was the one that said we will include vocational costs as operating costs of the district, even though that is a deviation from the statutory method. My thought on this is I don't think it requires any special timeline, since their first is gone anyways. But this has been our practice for probably since 1956, so I don't think we need to do anything with it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so then there are this lengthy set of comments regarding option 6.1, which was not an option chosen, so didn't deal with anything there. However, it said we generally have the same comments about section 6.2 and 6.3, so I want to just address those next in this section. So it says, paragraph 19, I understand the comment in the section under 6.1 to mean that a simplified definition of capital costs should be considered. Capital costs are defined in the regulations for educational collaboratives, which is the regulation they turn pointing us towards, even though we're not a collaborative, as the, quote, acquisition or improvement of fixed assets, including real property, with a unit cost of $5,000 and a useful life of 1 year or more, debt payments and deposits into capital reserve. They did note that in the current version of the agreement, there are different definitions of what capital costs are used in different places. So they're recommending a single definition of capital and recommending that we basically use this one from educational collaboratives as a model to define what we mean by capital. Then they had a question about foundation enrollment. If you recall, they said that our current agreement that talks about apportioning costs based on enrollment is vague because the enrollment of the district changes every day. And so how do you know how you're supposed to do the calculation? And so they said one definition was you could use foundation enrollment. They did bring up, once we put that in, some questions about foundation enrollment, including things such as, well, foundation enrollment is not the same as the enrollment in the building. It includes out-of-district students, blah, blah, blah. And they just wanted to make sure that we understood that. But I'm just going to say, it was surprising for me to see them say, well, why did you choose foundation enrollment when it was one of the options they gave us? With respect to the comment that the definition of enrollment be repeated in every section that relies upon calculation of enrollment, which I understand for consistency, so that we're using the same thing, everything all the way through. I believe this would require adding the following language to the end of paragraph 16 and 31. So we would add, quote, based on the ratio which the number of the town's foundation enrollment bears to the total foundation enrollment for all member towns' foundation enrollment for grades pre-K to 12 for all member towns. The foundation enrollment for purpose of calculating apportionment of operating costs will be determined using figures supported at 2 deci by each member town on October 1st, or in the event that the alternative assessment is used based on the town's combined 3-year rolling average of foundation enrollment for grades pre-K to 12. The member town bears to the foundation enrollment for all member towns in the district, calculated on the basis of a combined 3-year rolling average of the foundation enrollment for grades pre-K to 12 of all member towns. Foundation enrollment for the purposes of calculating the apportionment of the operating costs will be determined using the figures reported to DESI for each town on October 1st of the preceding 3 years. So that basically says
Foundation enrollment.
right.
Foundation enrollment.
Based on whether we're doing the 1-year option or the 3-year option. So I think that's clear.
Yep.
Good? Okay. Please.
So speaking foundation enrollment, just so everybody's clear on what's included in that, because in my former district that was the basis. It includes kids who go to private school, kids who go to vocational school, kids who go to charter choice, all the kids that are resident to the community that would be educated here if they didn't pick any of the other multiple options available. So it's important to make that distinction to the public at large, because if they think about who's in the building, then it's a lot of students, because it can be a significant difference between what's in the buildings and what's a foundation enrollment.
Children in our towns are our children, and our students.
Right. and you're collecting property tax from all of those people,
Yep.
et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so then there were comments about section 4C1 and 4C2. I'm not sure that those comments need to be addressed since those sections are being removed from the proposed amendment, so I just move them right along. The notes about section 4 lead me to believe that the streamlined language for paragraph 21 may be preferable. Possible language could be, in accordance with the terms of the leases, capital costs for leased schools shall be the responsibility of the towns in which the elementary and middle school is located and shall be paid directly by the towns. Basically, the language you have in there talks about all different things that could go wrong in the school that need to be paid for by the towns. So this is just simpler language saying, according to the lease, if something breaks, it costs more than the amount in the lease, then it's a town burden.
Sounds good.
Okay, next.
Well, except Wilbraham Middle School is kind of up in the air at this point, right?
Well, if option 3 of Attorney Sweeney's last memo is acceptable to the towns, then that would be included in the lease. And in that case, this language would work because they would be in accordance with the terms of the lease.
It's making the responsibility per the lease rather than per the agreement.
Okay, so that any potential change to Wilbraham Middle School capital will be dealt with only in the lease and will not be.
Well, it is also in the regional agreement. I can direct you where that is. This wasn't something they made a comment on because it wasn't in the agreement at the time. Let me just find that language. Okay, directing your attention to paragraph 23. It says, any leased building being utilized for the education of 100% of the district students in particular grade levels, irrespective of the towns of residency, will be treated as a district-owned building and capital costs will be apportioned in the same number as any other district building. So basically it says the lease for that building needs to say that the capital costs will be treated as if it was a district building. And then we would want the lease to match that language.
So I know that's the option you feel is favored by at least one of the towns. And I think we all agreed on that. Hearing that could, do we need that in the regional agreement? Because the regional agreement could fail to pass because of that sentence after all this work. And if what we really need is for both towns to agree on a modification of the lease, you know, that's separate from the regional agreement. And, you know, I think that there's actually probably still work to be done between the two towns agreeing on how to deal with Wilbraham Middle School.
What I would say to that is one of the things that I'm hoping comes out of tonight is agreements on all the rest of the decisions that need to be made. I can share that after the last meeting, as directed by the school committee, we reached out to both of the towns to begin negotiations on this. You know, I could say to Attorney Sweeney, if it was the will of the committee, if this becomes an issue in the light of the negotiations ongoing with the towns, maybe there's a different way we can deal with it by just having it in the lease and not having it in the agreement. If he thinks that's advisable, I'm not sure what his opinion is.
John, can we get a quick suggestion? So if we just change it to capital costs for leased schools shall be the responsibility of the towns in accordance with the terms of the leases, period.
Just move this phrase.
Get rid of the, in which the elementary or middle school shall be located by the town, whatever, take that out. And then move the in accordance with the terms of the leases at the end there. Right to where it says after the towns. Again, so capital costs for the leased schools shall be the responsibility of the town or towns in accordance with the terms of the leases.
I don't know that that modification is going to make that any more palatable to the town.
Oh, if I was a town member, then I don't think I'd like that at all. And I said that.
So getting back to the question that I had about the paragraph, which was added based on option 3 in Attorney Sweeney's memo, do you want me to indicate that that is something that's negotiable?
Talking about,
Pardon?
are you talking about negotiating this section? Do we have time for that?
It's section 23. Well, right now, both legal counsel for both towns have reached out to legal counsel for the school committee to work on this agreement, to get it ready for the town meetings. So I could anticipate that there are some additional things that come from that negotiation. What I'm asking is, when I talk to Sean, should the direction be, if this is a problem, there might be room to talk about other language? Or do we want to stay with the last vote, which was to put this language in?
Should we have a meeting with both select boards to have the conversation?
Could we do that in the context of the roundtable that's coming up?
Because we also, sure, we can see if that's possible. We also have a placeholder for meeting the next day.
That's true.
We weren't
We
just
back to
dedicate,
that.
if we just dedicated just this conversation to the following day's meeting, that could be something that's a possibility. I mean, I think all the attorneys are already in conversation, but I think it would be a bad idea for everyone to be at the same table having the conversation.
Yeah, I just continue. If it needs to be in the regional agreement, then we need it in there. If it doesn't need to be in the regional agreement, then we can have the leases modified. Of course, Anthony would have to join in on the lease, right? That's a different negotiation, conversation, all that kind of stuff. I think, right, and we keep going back to goal number 1, is to get the amendment to the regional agreement passed.
Desi did say a method of calculating the town's share of that's transportation costs, sorry.
So can we find out if it's necessary, if it needs to be in the agreement?
Yeah, well, we won't know until we hear back from Desi, which is why my thought was on this, that we would, when we get to the final version, circulate it to Desi so they can be in their legal review, but also circulate it to the other attorneys. And then maybe that would be a good way to prepare the parties for the discussion they're envisioning. With the understanding that if we don't have legal review completed by Desi at that time, we may not really have the flexibility to make the final call.
And I would like to get this in the hands, the edited version, in the hands of people in the communities, so they can go through it. And if they find some things that are objectionable that we don't see, that would be important for us to know.
Okay, so the next one is, we see a note by another commenter regarding an alternative assessment method, and want to remind you that an alternative assessment method is, if an alternative assessment method is included in the agreement, the district must still meet net school spending if it uses any alternative assessment method. My first response was, I believe this is just a statement of fact in the event that the The use of the alternative method put the district in jeopardy of not meeting minimum net school spending. I would expect the district to make it known and not do that. This is one of the ones that Sean and I spoke about this afternoon. His suggestion for dealing with this comment was to make a modification to paragraph 26.
Which note, I'm trying to follow along, which note is it on the left side, 6-3? Just trying to go back and forth.
The note is not numbered. Do you see the page that begins options 6.2 and 6.3?
Yeah, right there, it's the paragraph.
Yeah, it's the second paragraph. The black print is her note.
Under option 6-3, paragraph A.
Do you see that, Rich? Okay, so then Sean said, one thing we could do to address that comment is in paragraph 26, which is the first paragraph of the alternative assessment method, insert the parenthetical note subject to the requirement for net school spending. So I would say the place to put that would be at the end of the first sentence. So just keep that first sentence the way it is, but then add parenthetically subject to the requirement for net school spending. These are not.
So after for all members, you would put in, is that the first?
All member towns, right? For all member towns,
yeah.
subject to the requirement for net school spending.
Right.
Good?
Yep. How realistic is it that we could be in danger of violating that?
At this point, thankfully, it would be a remote possibility. Okay, so next, option 6.2, paragraph F4, apportionment of capital costs seems to indicate capital costs are apportioned at Wilbraham Middle School the same as at Minnechaga and other district-owned schools. Paragraph 6F then mentions at least the middle schools in the first line along with elementary schools, but then only mentions elementary schools in the last line. It's not clear then how middle school capital costs are apportioned. I said I believe that was resolved by the incorporation of the new language in 4F, which is paragraph 23, which is the paragraph that was just identified as problematic. But it at least addresses the problem that was noted by the commenter. Maybe it creates other problems, but it clarifies that. So I think that's we'll just say that's the one we got to talk about. Next, option 6.3, paragraph A. We advise keeping this language regardless of which option is chosen. And I think she just lost track of it in all the different options we had, but that language was maintained in all the options. So I don't think there's anything to be there.
Yep.
Under 6.3, paragraph F, it is the intent to use only foundation enrollment of students 6 to 12 in this method. And that language is deleted from the current version approved by the committee, so I don't think that is no longer relevant. Next, in option 6.3, paragraph G1A, it appears that the ratio for apportionment is a proportion of the town's 9 to 12 students divided by K to 12 students. Is that the intent? And then I think she's talking about paragraph section 4G2, the alternative assessment, and I think she just misread it because it clearly refers to enrollments in grades pre-K to 12. So I think that was just a misunderstanding on their part. Next, we have option 6.3G2, payment schedule, and option 6.3G2E, excess deficiency contain provisions that we recommend including separately rather than in a section addressing alternative assessment, as they would apply in all situations regardless of what assessment method is used. And my thought on this is that this recommendation is accepted, the language would remain the same, but paragraphs 29 and 30 would become parts H and I of section 4. So it would just be moving.
Yeah.
Good on that?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah.
Now transportation, says needs to be reconsidered after the decisions made on the options used for assessing operating costs. I think we've taken care of that and the other things related to operating costs. Next is, in addition, we recommend that you indicate that the district shall provide transportation to and from school as required by the law. So if we just, current agreement says provide transportation. So if this is accepted, we would just insert the phrase to and from school.
And that's required.
As required by law and school policy, section 31. Good on that?
Yep.
Okay, next we have admission. Incorrect regulation should reference 603 CMR 41032A. We've confirmed that they're correct about that. So just updating the citation.
I don't think we should change it. No, I'm just joking, please. Yeah, if it's incorrect, let's change it.
Okay. And it says you might want to include more detail about the apportionment of existing district debt to new member towns. Did not address that. If you have thoughts on that, we can. I think if we have new member towns, we'll have to change the agreement anyway. So. Okay. So then, section 4B and C, withdrawal, it said it'd be helpful to discuss those sections. I sent an email to them requesting a meeting because they say we should have a meeting. So that is in the works. Whenever we meet, we may have some more changes for section 4B and 4C. It says, now moving on to section 7, you might consider that an amendment could be proposed by a method other than a majority of the vote of the committee, i.e., for example, a percent of registered voters of one or both towns. That's something we've never discussed. I don't know if it's something you want to get into.
Let's keep this simple.
Okay. Now it says the budget must be adopted by a 2/3 vote of the full committee. That is a correct clarification of the law. So, if this is accepted, the words 2/3 vote of full committee would replace majority vote in the part of the budget.
That's fine. Law.
Okay. Sure.
Once, to section.
Can you get a microphone?
If you could look at section 6B and C, I think you said it was 4B and C.
Oh, I did. I think I read my Roman numerals backwards there.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Now we're on section 9, other. We recommended that the leasing option be combined with the location of the schools. I said see note above because we already addressed that in one of their other things where they said we should move the length section. So that's already been addressed. Next, we recommend that a separate section be included to address incurring debt. The section must include the intended default method to be used to incur debt. I said at the time I didn't know what that meant, and I got an email yesterday explaining what that meant. So I would now draw your attention to my supplemental memorandum sent yesterday. So there are basically two methods to incur debt in a statute currently, neither which is consistent with what's currently in our regional agreement. One is essentially that the school committee votes to incur debt, and then the towns are notified within 7 days, and then they have 60 days to raise an objection if they don't want the district to incur debt. If there is no objection, then the school committee can go ahead. That's the method that's actually kind of closest to your current method. And then there's an alternative method that's on the back of the memo, which says the school committee wants to incur debt. Then there is a district-wide vote from the registered members in the member towns. All this language about how the election needs to be carried out. And then if that election is successful, the school committee can go ahead and incur debt. So the question for the committee is, which one of these options would you want to have in the section other for your incurring debt?
So my question about the second one, when I initially read it this afternoon, was would town hall meeting be acceptable, or would it have to be an actual vote in the town of registered voters?
I'm not expert on this, and I would invite anyone who knows more about it than I do to weigh in, but as I read it, it says this is a specific vote on this because it is district-wide. So it's like...
So it would be an actual ballot, people have to come down and do it.
That's how I understand it.
I didn't like the option one because it just has this like 60-day period where nothing happens and stuff, and we're waiting, and it's like, what's going on here? Where the other one is more of like a direct vote, and I thought I don't know if we could change it to be like at a town hall meeting rather than an actual vote, but I mean.
Well, that shows that there's balance. The election, it says that it shall be conducted in each town the same manner as town meetings for the election of town officers. The second option.
Yeah, but the section on how we elect town officers is not at the town meeting, it's at a ballot, yeah.
So kind of a little information on the first option, regarding that 60-day notice. It actually empowers you much more than the other one does, and it has less delay because you have an obligation to create notice to them, to the town clerk, that you've taken this authorization for debt. If they take no action, you've got authorization to borrow. That can get kind of sneaky because you can do it, July 1st, and then suddenly in the middle of September you can borrow a bunch of money. Because not all select boards meet regularly over the summertime. You'd always want to borrow money and partner with your communities in a way that didn't hijack the methodology. But I think you get the potential. How this. So the previous district I was in used that methodology. What we did from just a practical standpoint was we tried to align any debt authorization with our budget process. So because we know the town has to have an annual town meeting, and they can do an approval at an annual town meeting if they want to put it on the select board makes the decision on whether to put it on the warrant, and then if it's on the warrant, then they have the option to refuse that authorization of debt. And so that can be done through town meeting and the regular schedule of town meeting. So if you put it on that schedule, you can borrow money essentially July 1st, and that fits with the rest of your budgeting and that sort of thing. If you do the other method, I think you're bound by the election schedule of your community when they're going to have an election, or they're going to have to call a special election. That's an expensive process generally for communities to do. So that's things to think about in a way as far as, the towns get a lot more control over the debt in that circumstance and the authorization of that debt. So that's, that's a political decision about what you think is going to pass your towns as well. So they may.
The second option seems to be a little more honest, a little more transparent, a little more everyone gets a vote on it and stuff. I know it might be a little more inconvenient for us, but I think in the community, I think it's just maybe the better option.
I disagree.
It's also more work for the district. Just saying that we have to prepare the ballots, we incur the costs.
Or every May when we have a town election, we could just plan it so that we have it for the May ballot.
Any other thoughts?
Want to do a show of hands for option 1 and option 2? Option 1? All right. Option 2? All right. Option 1
Don't let me forget to come back to student transfers, because that came up today too. Okay, but just continuing on, the agreement to ensure that the school committee has general charge and superintendents over all these buildings. That's already in paragraph 42, so I don't think we need any change there. It's not clear how the district would administer all expenses of maintaining and operating these buildings. While towns pay these expenses, there should be additional detail addressing this. So that, again, I said see note above because that's already been covered in other other comments they had. And then finally, the agreement should include who the signatories of the lease are, the school committee and select board. In addition, such leases should be controlled by MGL 71S16R, not MGL 40S3. So again, it would just be changing the legal citation and identifying signatories to the lease if you accept this.
That's fine.
So we should make any other questions? Otherwise, we can make a motion. Oh, sorry.
So the other thing that came up, well, I was talking to Attorney Sweeney. You'll notice he only had 5 comments, so that's good, I think. But he said something about paragraph 14, which I think is important, which is the one that has to do with transfer of students. And the language from transfer of students was basically just kept the same because the decision was not to make any changes with respect to that. However, if students in grades 6 through 8 are already all located in one building and that's the intention of the agreement, then does it really make sense to say that students in pre-K to 8 can request a transfer? Or should we say students in pre-K to 5 can request a transfer? Because there'd be no other building for students in 6th to 8 to go to.
Is paragraph 14 the one, elementary schools 3?
Elementary schools C3, correct.
And that seems to me to say students in grade pre-K through 8 inclusive may be reassigned to schools outside of their respective towns when, in the judgment of the committee, there is a temporary need to reassign students when damage to a physical plant renders the facility unusable in whole or in part for its intended purposes. Is that the correct one?
That is what I said, but that's not the right section. The one that talks about the 3 things is reassignment that is prudent, can be accomplished in the best interest of the students, actually.
Okay, 13. So that's 13, that's the one before, okay.
And that doesn't mention grades, so maybe we don't have to make any change there.
That's why, yeah.
All right, so that's that.
Well, maybe, so you're thinking for section 3, just get rid of the grades. So that it would just say, students may be reassigned to schools outside of their respective towns.
Correct, although that's very similar to the language about allowing kids to be reassigned that was not seen as favorable by the planning committee. However, this is language that's been in the, I mean, maybe the way to address it is to say this is not a change. This has been in the agreement probably since 1956. But I would say maybe taking the grades out again.
Yeah,
so that
taking the grades, taking out in grades pre-K through 8 inclusive. Taking out those 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep.
Okay.
Great work, John.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, great work, John.
Thank you.
So we should vote.
Can I make a motion to accept the changes as discussed and agreed upon today during this meeting?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, so we will do it all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. All right, so we will continue with the Finance Operations Subcommittee.
So what I'd like to do is just, because we have in 2 weeks, roughly, a couple of weeks, we have the roundtable, and I would like to get together, work an agenda, plan it all out, how we want to handle it. And what was the other thing that we were talking about adding to it, to the meeting?
The capital plan.
And the capital plan. So if we could maybe do that. Are you available, is anybody available, I think it's Tuesday of next week?
We have a planning meeting. Oh, so back to the planning report. So we have a planning meeting on Tuesday, January 28th at 5:30 here in the IRC.
What about Monday? Would Monday work for anybody? Is that enough time?
Next month?
Yeah, I don't think it's enough time.
No.
I'm not free next Tuesday.
What about Thursday? 30th?
Ooh. Yeah, I have
An angel just got us.
conflict on
What was that?
I have a conflict on the 30th.
The Democratic Town meeting? Maybe we could be before that? Because isn't that on Zoom?
Yeah, I'm supposed to be speaking, and I'm not sure when I'm not on the agenda. When is the roundtable meeting that we're trying to plan for?
The 4th.
The 4th,
The 4th.
4th of
February.
February.
And that's a Tuesday, which means
We have negotiations before that.
Yeah.
means
So
they're
we would have
posting.
to, in order for us to plan the agenda, get the agenda out there, so it has to be sometime next week.
What,
What?
Thursday's the last day of the week.
Do you think that we could do it after the planning committee at 6:30?
It's not on my calendar.
Or before the planning committee?
sure.
It may not be.
Would that work for you?
Um,
Oh, wait a minute. Would that
After
work for
would be
you?
better.
Well, what worked for me?
Is before or after on Tuesday, the 28th, work better for you? We have planning from 5:30 to 6:30. Oh, wait a minute. You're not on the finance committee, so maybe we can do it on the 30th.
I'm on call.
Oh, okay.
I might be.
So you said better afterwards, Michelle?
Actually, it doesn't matter, we can do either.
What's better
I
for
can
you
do-
on Tuesday, the 28th? Mike?
I am busy from 6 to 7. Otherwise, I'm cool.
Do you want to do it, 4 to 5, worst case 5:30?
I won't make it.
I thought,
I'm in the office. I meant at the evening.
oh,
How about, like,
We can do 7.
can we do it at 7:30?
sure.
It's not going to be a long meeting, right?
I hate to talk about, if we can get some work done on this and then just be approving or saying how we want to change it for the capital expenses. And the agenda, if we all come in with what we think and we would like to see on on the agenda for the 4th, it could be a quick meeting.
Can we, why don't we take this offline and we will,
Okay.
in an email, we can all get on the thread and we can plan the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, just to make sure that everyone, even from the admin team, is able to attend.
The
Yeah,
roundtable, it's not on my calendar, is that for the whole school committee, and what is it?
It's the
yeah, everyone's
roundtable.
going to send out an invitation to everybody.
It's Tuesday, February 4th at 5:30.
Just did.
And it's here in the IRC, that's when the legislative bodies and our representatives are here. We have representation from both towns here as well.
Just so you know, I'm on call, so no promises there.
Okay.
So when you say our representative,
On our representatives.
when you say our representatives, are we just talking about our senator and our rep?
So Cupolo, Ash, and Olivera will be here. And attending, and their aides will be here as well.
So have we tried to widen that group at all?
Not to my knowledge.
I think the more reps and senators we can get to hear our concerns, even though they may not be concerns of the reps in Springfield, because their concerns are a little different than our concerns, but they're not. They are the same. It's just a matter of how they're funding special ed is a nightmare for communities this size. Our kids are being shortchanged, and under the law, it's supposed to be least restricted. And I don't think what we do with our kids who have severe behavioral problems is least restricted. To put them on a bus and send them across the river, take them away from all their friends, ability to participate in athletics. It just doesn't seem right to me.
Might I suggest you just call up those that you'd like to see at the meeting and invite them to the meeting I mean, everyone's allowed to sit, and I don't know if we're going to have public comment or not, but they'd be able to come to the meeting and hear and talk with us after.
But I think certainly for our future budget roundtables, they can be included on the invitation list, because we do send out a save the date in advance and just checking to see their availability, hoping that they can attend.
Hey, send me a list and I can call them myself.
5:30. So budget roundtable on Tuesday, February 4th, 5:30 here in the IRC. So next, the LPDEC collaborative representative, Lisa.
All right, so I'm going to make this way shorter than I had originally planned. So on page 3, I just wanted to share with you our 2024 year in review, everything that Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative does. We talked about CTEC here before, special alternative education, transportation, also does Medicaid reimbursement, energy management programs, job-alike groups, which is meetings of superintendents, curriculum directors, special ed directors, principals, and business managers from the area meeting together, curriculum, instruction, assessment, and other educational support services like professional development and technical assistance regarding educational improvement initiatives. On page 4, you can see a map of all of the areas that we service in some capacity in any of those, provide any of those services. And if you want to know any more about it, you can look through the rest of the overview.
Perfect. Any questions for Lisa?
And next meeting, you can tell me if you give me a thumbs up for it. There you go.
I reviewed all the stuff before. There's a lot of information there. Thank you, Lisa.
Negotiations, nothing to report at this time. Policy subcommittee, Mike.
All right. It's a bit truncated, courtesy of our new fearless leader. Sorry, a little bit truncated. All I have, this is a second reading of IKF, graduation requirements. For those of you that might notice, there's a number that were withdrawn, correct, due to federal policy changes since the inauguration of President Trump.
So you're saying that the ones that we had that were on second and third readings and stuff like that, we've taken off?
Correct. Those policy changes were to make us compliant with federal policies in regards to sexual identity that were part of an amendment to the Title IX, which has been repealed by the Trump administration.
But isn't that something that we can still use that language if we would like to use that language?
It's interesting. If we choose to go beyond what Title IX, what would be the precedent for that?
So just first of all, let me clarify one thing. The changes to the Title IX regulations were actually ruled unlawful. There was a lawsuit that was brought by the state of Tennessee. I think it was heard in a court in, I want to say, Kentucky or West Virginia. Kentucky, thank you. And they ruled that the regulations were unlawful, which means that, not exactly clear, but we believe it means that we go back to the regulations that preceded those, which were the Trump-era regulations. So it seems highly unlikely that the Trump administration would try to appeal a decision which affirmed and reinstated its regulations. So I think that the problem with simply sort of moving forward and saying we will implement the Biden regulations is there are many parts of the current regulations that would be inconsistent with that. Most of those have to do with process. For example, in the regulations that are now in place, we believe, the Trump era regulations, the person who does an investigation of a Title IX claim and the person who decides what the penalty for a violation of Title IX cannot be the same person. Under the policies you were just about to approve, they could be the same person because that was one of the changes that Biden made. So I think if you just said, we'll go back and just continue with our regulations, we would be in danger of implementing a process that was unlawful because it is no longer in compliance with the regulations at the federal level.
Okay, but not all of the things that we had proposed were that language.
There were other places where other protections based on Massachusetts law are enshrined in our regulations, and those remain. I just think the changes that we were making specifically due to Title IX, which were all the changes that were in those policies we were doing, should still go forward. If you look at the advice from the MASC, they're basically saying if you've made a change, undo it. If you haven't made a change, don't do it yet. So we're kind of following that recommendation.
Is there a possibility that we could ask DESE and the Mass Association of School Committees and the Mass Association of Superintendents to appeal that ruling that happened in Kentucky and bring it to federal court?
I think
it's being appealed.
I'm not sure how that would work because I'm not sure we were a party of it. I can do some research on that and get back to you. My understanding, and I could be wrong, is where I'm not an attorney and I'm not that close to this case, is that the loser was the federal government. So the federal government would have to be, I believe, the one who chooses to appeal.
Oh, I thought I had heard something that said it was appealed because didn't it happen before the inauguration?
It did.
Yeah, and I thought that, I could be wrong, but I thought that was one of the last things that they had done before the inauguration was to appeal.
It's definitely something we'll keep our eye on, and I can do some more research on whether there's any type of action that the local agencies could take. But right now, and we're still in the second reading. We could go back to third reading at a later date if something changes. But I just think right now the state of play is to stand down those policies.
Okay.
Copy that.
So you have your next policy meeting is on Monday, February 10th in the district office. Is that right?
Sure.
You at 5:30? I think it's 5. 5. Okay.
I got 5.
5 o'clock. Okay. And do you have anything to report on the LPDF Corporation?
We haven't met.
Perfect.
Are we going to end up, so the recent bus thing, is that going to need to be discussed at your level or my level?
Both.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
my level, yes. And
I
just
bet
the
we're going
dollars.
to have an extra meeting this year. More news to follow.
Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't on the agenda, but should that have been on the agenda?
I don't know if there's nothing.
It was too late.
Yeah.
Right? The fire happened after it was time for the post.
So then it's one of those things where it's an emergency thing that happened that we could talk about because we didn't really have knowledge of it when we had it.
But we don't have that. We don't have details. We don't have, confirmed information. So I think that, it
I
was
have
on the
the
news.
information that was in the preliminary report of
Right.
the state fire marshal, but do you all have that?
I have the Wilbraham Fire Department
So-
issued a statement, but I don't have anything from the state.
So the information that I've been given is, and this is not their final findings, but it only appears that one of the buses caught fire and then it spread to buses parked next to it, which happened to be other electric buses. And it didn't seem to have anything to do with the propulsion electric system. It had to do with the existing 12-volt electrical system. Most electric vehicles
still have a 12-volt battery in them because it's too costly for the auto manufacturers to reinvent electric windows, electric door locks, the radios, which all run on 12 volts. So it was potentially a problem with the age-old 12-volt electrical system that's in every single bus, diesel, gas, whatever.
I would just say be careful of saying anything right now because that's still a potential and there's a massive amount of different agencies that need to come out and actually do an investigation together on it and agree on what happened, so.
Correct, I'm only sharing what someone has passed down to me.
If
So I
you could
think-
forward that on to us, I'd appreciate it.
So we will certainly add this as an agenda item, but it was not added to tonight's agenda, and I don't think it's negligence on our part for not having it or discussing it this evening. Anyway, consent agenda.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Any questions or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We do need for executive session. Oh, our next meeting is Tuesday, February 4th at 5:30 here. That's a budget roundtable again here in the IRC. And so we do need for executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, C Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with HWEA or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. HWEA Unit A, C, and clerical contracts.
So moved.
Okay, so we will do roll call to move into executive session. We will not be returning, and we will be adjourning from executive session. So good night, thank you. Roll call, Cheryl. Tim.
Yes.
Sean.
Aye.
Lisa. Aye. Rich.
Yes.
Mike.
Yep.
And myself, aye. We are adjourned to executive session, 9:37 p.m.
You want to take a 5-minute biological?